Chapter 1278. Cough. Cough. You. Who are you? Luo Ho staggered toward the mysterious man while coughing up blood. He looked at the mysterious man with fear in his eyes. The man was dressed in black and had white hair. His eyes were like stars, and his face was elegant and handsome. He gave off a harmless feeling. However, if one stared at his eyes carefully, they would find that his eyes were flickering as if time was passing quietly in his eyes. Terrifying. Extremely terrifying. With just a glance, Luo Ho's heart suddenly trembled. He was sure that if the mysterious man wanted to kill him, he would not be able to withstand a single blow. Even the master of the Heavenly Grip Hall did not give him such a terrifying feeling. However, this mysterious man gave him such a feeling. This also showed that the mysterious man was definitely more terrifying than the master of the Heavenly Grip Hall. It seems that you are Yi Xian's friend, right? The mysterious man smiled slightly. May I know your name? Luo Ho calmed down instantly and cupped his hands to salute the mysterious man. However, a touch of seriousness flashed across his eyes as he prepared to guard against the mysterious man's sudden attack. My name is Lu Yaoxing, a contemporary disciple of the Temporal Temple. Lu Yaoxing introduced himself with a kind smile on his face. The Temporal Temple. Luo Ho's expression changed slightly, but he calmed down in the next moment. He should have guessed the mysterious man's origin. After all, the move just now involved the space-time method. The mysterious man could only be from the Temporal Temple. I saw that you used the boundless mortal world technique just now. It is extremely rare for you to cultivate the karma force. However, your technique is not authentic. I guess you must have secretly learned the boundless mortal world technique, right? Lu Yaoxing said with a smile. You? Luo Ho's heart trembled. He did not expect the mysterious man to be so observant. This also made him understand that the Temporal Temple was worthy of being one of the 3 strongest orthodoxies. Just the knowledge of its disciples was so terrifying. Suddenly, the sound of swallowing and spitting could be heard. Yi Xian had already finished devouring the blood soul essence of the Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall. His originally pale face, which had suffered from the backlash, had also become rosy at this moment. It could be said that Yi Xian had suffered a great calamity from the backlash of the 12 Yuanhui worlds. Fortunately, he had devoured the blood soul essence of the Heavenhold Court Master to replenish his injuries. Otherwise, it would take him an unknown amount of time to recover from this backlash. What surprised Yi Xian the most was that the master of the Heavenly Grip Hall had an extremely large cultivation base. Not only did it heal his injuries, the refined energy could also allow his cultivation to step into the second stage of the creation realm. However, Yi Xian did not immediately attempt to break through to the second stage of the creation realm, because there was a more important matter before him. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. Otherwise, I might have already died at the hands of this old fellow. Yi Xian cupped his hands and bowed. His entire body was extremely calm, and didn't reveal the slightest bit of surprise. Looking at Yi Xian's calm appearance, Lu Yaoxing's eyes moved slightly. He smiled and said, You must be joking. Even without my help, I think you could have killed this person. I was just the icing on the cake. But without your help, I would have had to pay a great price if I wanted to kill him. So, you don't have to be so modest. Yi Xian said softly. You don't seem to be surprised by my identity. Aren't you afraid that I'm here to kill you? Lu Yaoxing's voice was slightly cold. Yi Xian smiled, but his smile was very evil. A deep look flashed across his eyes as he looked at Lu Yaoxing. With your Yin realm cultivation and the power of time and space, you could have easily killed me just now. But you didn't do so, Yi Xian said calmly. Meticulous and calm in the face of danger. Just this mentality alone is enough to make me see you in a new light. You suddenly make me want to be friends with you. Lu Yaoxing smiled and nodded with praise. I don't have many friends. Unfortunately, you're not one of them. Yi Xian said calmly. That's right. You and I can't be friends because we were born to be rivals. With your strength, you are indeed qualified to compete with me for the position of the strongest in the next Yuanhui. Lu Yaoxing nodded slowly. There was a trace of regret in his words. Unfortunately, I don't see you as an opponent, although I'm not your opponent now, Yi Xian said coldly. As Yi Xian finished speaking, Lu Yaoxing's gentle expression changed. He looked at Yi Xian in shock, and did not recover for a long time. Ha ha ha. Lu Yaoxing smiled. His smile shook the world as strands of space-time energy overflowed from his body and surged through the world. A small space-time tree appeared on his head, and from the looks of it, it was more than twice the size of Yi Xian's. You are very arrogant, so arrogant that you don't even put me in your eyes. But I like your arrogance very much. Then I will wait for you to defeat me, because only after you defeat me can you say these words to me. Lu Yaoxing laughed. But the next moment his expression turned cold. When he opened his eyes, the terrifying power of time and space rotated endlessly. The surrounding space seemed to be moving in reverse. However, I can let you off the hook this time. But if you disrespect me again, I can only punish you slightly. Rumble. The tree of time and space was swaying. The power of time and space was roaring. Lu Yaoxing's terror bloomed to the extreme at this moment. It was not something Yi Xian could compare with. Lu Yaoxing was a disciple of the Temple of Time and Space, and was listed as a candidate for the ultimate seed. His understanding of the way of time and space was far above Yi Xian's. Moreover, he had the space battle physique, which was an extremely rare physique. Even if he could not become the strongest of all time in the future, he would definitely be a top figure among the strongest. He had his pride, and would not allow anyone to blaspheme him. Even if Yi Xian was the person the Lord of Time and Space was looking for, there was no exception. To be a candidate for the ultimate seed, this kind of person had an invincible heart, and believed that he was the strongest in the world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to compete for the position of the strongest in the next Yuanhui. At this moment, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly, and a touch of seriousness flashed through his eyes. It had to be said that Lu Yaoxing was absolutely powerful. Although he was in the Yin realm, if he had fought with the Lord of Heavenly Grip Hall, the Lord of Heavenly Grip Hall would not have been able to withstand even one move. The way of time and space was the strongest power. He had mastered many space-time grand techniques, and had the space battle physique. This kind of person could be called a monster, and could not be judged by common sense. I would like to see how powerful the disciples of the Temple of Time and Space are. Suddenly Yi Xian said coldly. He did not give Lu Yaoxing a chance to speak at all. The tree of time and space rippled out, and a space-time grand technique was directly launched by Yi Xian. Rumble. Time reversed and time and space disappeared. Yi Xian absolutely did not hold back in this attack. The supreme power that disturbed time and space fell toward Lu Yaoxing. Chapter 1279. Reckless, violent, unbearably crude. Lu Yaoxing's expression didn't change, he only frowned slightly. He didn't seem to make any movements, but the power of space and time also overflowed. However, with a single point of his finger, the space-time technique that Yi Xian had unleashed instantly dissipated, and the rest of its might didn't decrease as it smashed towards Yi Xian. Boom! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying, and he was almost hit by Lu Yaoxing's space-time technique. Fortunately, his physical body was extremely strong, and he instantly shattered the technique around him. As expected, Yi Xian's figure stabilized, and a fiery look flashed across his eyes. He looked at Lu Yaoxing with a greedy look. All this time, Yi Xian had been fumbling around with his own cultivation, and his use of the power of space-time had also been figured out by himself. However, Yi Xian had always had a feeling that the method of using space-time that he figured out did not seem to be able to fully unleash the power of space-time. It was not only the power of space-time, but also the power of nirvanic extermination, which always gave him a stiff feeling. Just now, Lu Yaoxing's attack had finally confirmed Yi Xian's guess. His use of space-time was not even half as good as Lu Yaoxing's. Lu Yaoxing had also used a space-time technique, but the power released by Lu Yaoxing's attack was exactly the same as his. However, the power released was 3 times stronger than his. 3 times. This was not a simple number. The difference simply shocked Yi Xian to the core. If he could also learn this method of using space-time, his combat strength would definitely double. An unorthodox path is an unorthodox path. To think that you even managed to cultivate the time and space divine tree. However, Your usage of the power of time and space is even inferior to the children of my time and space temple. You truly have humiliated my time and space temple. Lu Yaoxing loudly reprimanded as he helplessly looked at Yi Xian. Please enlighten me, fellow Taoist. Yi Xian was not angered by Lu Yaoxing's reprimand. Instead, he turned his eyes and cupped his hands in greeting, appearing extremely humble and courteous. The power of space-time depends on the heart. You haven't comprehended the true essence of space-time. You clearly used all of your strength, but the power you displayed wasn't even 40%. If you want to truly display the power of space-time, you should, Lu Yaoxing casually commented, but in the next moment, his voice paused, and his expression turned gloomy. He had almost fallen into Yi Xian's trap, and revealed the cultivation method of the temporal temple. You're not a disciple of the temporal temple. You can stop dreaming if you want to learn our techniques, Lu Yaoxing said angrily. Heh. Looking at Lu Yaoxing's cold expression, Yi Xian sneered. He knew that Lu Yaoxing was on guard. It seemed that it was not realistic to try to get the cultivation method of the temporal temple out of him. Since Lu Yaoxing didn't say anything, Yi Xian didn't have a good expression. He said gloomily, I admit that I'm not your opponent, but your cultivation level is only slightly higher than mine. Let's see how arrogant you can be when I reach the yin-yang plane. Arrogant. Lu Yaoxing's expression froze. He was completely speechless. From the beginning to the end, the most arrogant person was you, Yi Xian, right? Alright, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I'm here today because the space-time master ordered me to bring you back to the temporal temple. Come with me now. Lu Yaoxing realized that although Yi Xian made him very curious, he was very shrewd. He had to complete the mission. There would be plenty of time to deal with him in the future. Space-time master? Hearing Lu Yaoxing's words, Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. Although Yi Xian guessed that Lu Yaoxing's appearance must have a purpose, he didn't expect that the space-time master would want to see him. Looking at Yi Xian's stunned expression, Lu Yaoxing sneered. What, are you afraid? But to be honest, not only do you cultivate the power of time and space, but you also cultivate the power of nirvanic destruction, and your friend even cultivates the power of karma. The secrets you have really surprised me. If I hadn't been ordered to bring you to the temporal temple, I would have really wanted to force the other supreme techniques out of you. Alright, I agree. I'll go with you to the temporal temple. Yi Xian didn't care about Lu Yaoxing's mockery. Instead, he thought quickly and calmly looked at Lu Yaoxing, a deep look in his eyes. Yi Xian, you can't go with him. Yu Luoho's expression changed. The temporal temple was one of the 3 strongest orthodoxies. Yi Xian had so many secrets. If he really went to the temporal temple, his life would be in danger. Luoho, you don't have to worry. Go back to the Yama Demon Hall first. When I return from the temporal temple, I will naturally look for you. Yi Xian said calmly, and casually tossed the Qingquan pouch to Luoho. This also made Luoho frown. Holding the pouch in his hand, he didn't know what to say. Good, you are indeed courageous. Originally, I hated you a little, but now I admire you a little. Lu Yaoxing clapped and smiled. Yi Xian, have you really thought it through? Luoho said solemnly. He was still worried about Yi Xian's calamity. Without waiting for Yi Xian's reply, Lu Yaoxing smiled and said, There is still a chance of survival if you go with me. Right now, I'm not the only one looking for him. The disciples of the other orthodoxies are all rushing here. If they find the two of you will already be suppressed, and might even lose your lives. Luoho, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Yi Xian gave Luoho a subtle look, indicating that he didn't need to persuade him anymore. In fact, even if Lu Yaoxing didn't want to bring Yi Xian to the temporal temple, Yi Xian also wanted to go there personally. The reason was simple. Future self. Yes, future self. Back then, the future self had been walking in the river of time, and the temporal master was known to control the river of time. He must know about the future self's existence. The future self had told Yi Xian to change the future and undo all the regrets of the past. The future self had also told him that the future path would be very difficult. Moreover, the pair of ominous eyes in the river of time made the future self extremely wary. What kind of secrets were hidden here? All of these were mysteries, and Yi Xian needed to uncover them one by one. The temporal master must know these secrets, so even if there was a life-and-death crisis, he must go to the temporal temple. Moreover, after seeing Lu Yaoxing's space-time technique today, Yi Xian was even more certain of this idea. Perhaps if he went to the temporal temple, he would have the opportunity to learn these space-time techniques. This would be unimaginably beneficial to his own cultivation. Let's go. If we don't go now, when those annoying fellows arrive, I will have to fight them personally. Lu Yaoxing shook his head in disgust, as if he was thinking of an extremely difficult person to deal with. Fellow Taoist, please lead the way. Yi Xian said softly. Qi. Lu Yaoxing sent out a starlight boat, and the two of them stepped on it. In an instant, they broke through the barrier of space and disappeared from this world. Yi Xian, you must come back alive. Looking at the starlight boat that had already disappeared into the distance, Luo Ho sighed helplessly. His face was heavy, and then he turned into a streak of light and disappeared. Chapter 1280. The starlight boat shuttled through space at an unimaginable speed, especially under Lu Yaoxing's control. It was almost no different from teleportation. To be honest, Yi Xian saw many wonderful uses of the space-time technique from Lu Yaoxing, which made him deeply impressed. It turned out that the space-time technique could be used in such a profound way. This also strengthened Yi Xian's idea. If he had the chance, he must learn this technique. It would bring unimaginable benefits to him. The starlight boat shuttled through space like a shadow and light. However, Yi Xian was an extremely sensitive person. He noticed that Lu Yaoxing's expression was somewhat serious. He was completely focused on controlling the boat, and had no intention of chatting with him at all. It was as if there was a difficult enemy chasing after them. Lu Yaoxing had no choice but to be cautious. You seem to be hiding from someone? Yi Xian probed. Just some annoying fellows. If you weren't by my side, I wouldn't have to hide my tracks like this. Lu Yaoxing frowned slightly. Who are they? Someone who could make Lu Yaoxing feel annoyed was obviously not an ordinary person. Yi Xian could guess that these people were probably here for him. As expected, Lu Yaoxing said coldly. They are all disciples of other supreme orthodoxies. They have been ordered to look for you, and capture them back to their orthodoxies. But you can rest assured, with me by your side, they won't be able to find any traces of us. After all, the space-time technique can travel through space. You can rest assured. Yi Xian nodded when he heard Lu Yaoxing's words. He then sat down cross-legged, and began to refine the mixed essence qi in his body. Yi Xian had only recovered from his injuries after devouring the heavenly grip court lord. There was still a lot of essence qi in his body that he had not refined for his own use. These essence qi were enough for him to step into the second stage of the creation realm. Buzz! Yi Xian inhaled and exhaled. His sky burial technique was circulating rapidly. His entire body was in a meditative state. The aura around him churned violently as he gradually advanced toward the second stage of the creation realm. This kid's cultivation method? Although Lu Yaoxing had been focused on controlling the starry sky boat, he had been secretly observing Yi Xian. After all, his mission was to safely bring Yi Xian back to the time and space temple. When he felt the aura of Yi Xian's heaven-burying technique, he was shocked. He felt that the technique that Yi Xian cultivated had caused the space-time power in his body to faintly move. This kid really has a lot of secrets, Lu Yaoxing muttered. Then he stopped paying attention to Yi Xian, and continued to speed up the starlight boat. A full year passed and Lu Yaoxing did not stop at all. He had already traveled an unknown distance. Needless to say, the central territory was too vast. One might not be able to reach its end even if they walked for 100,000 years, let alone the boundlessly vast chaotic universe. Boom! Suddenly, Yi Xian spat out a stream of turbid air. The aura around him suddenly became terrifying. In the next moment, it returned to normal, and his eyes slowly opened. I'm a little curious. You're just a mortal. How can your cultivation speed be so terrifying? Even if you've learned the demonic heaven-gorging technique, this realm is a little too fast. Aren't you afraid of being disturbed by your inner demons? Lu Yaoxing's voice rang out. Do you think I'll tell you? Yi Xian deliberately sneered. Oomph. Lu Yaoxing snorted coldly. I'm just curious. Don't be so smug. You're just a mortal. The creation and transformation realms are your limit. No matter how many supreme techniques you cultivate, you'll still be an ant in the end. Unless... Lu Yaoxing paused as if he had thought of something. His expression changed slightly, and he fell silent. Actually, I'm very curious about how the disciples of the Time and Space Temple cultivate. Why don't you share your experiences with me? This can be considered a good karma. Yi Xian rolled his eyes. Don't even think about it. I won't. Bang. Before Lu Yaoxing could finish, a loud rumble rang out. This caused Lu Yaoxing's expression to change. In the next moment, the entire Starlight boat shook violently. The two of them, and the boat appeared in the outside world. Damn it! Lu Yaoxing coldly roared as the power of time and space exploded out, directly covering Yi Xian behind him. 3 figures also appeared in front of him. Yaoxing, a worthy younger brother, why are you in such a hurry? I haven't seen you in so many years. I've missed you. A black-clothed young man slowly walked towards Lu Yaoxing. He was handsome and extraordinary. The black power of nirvanic extermination revolved around him. He was smiling at Lu Yaoxing. Song Huaimie, you really annoy me. Lu Yaoxing frowned, and said with disgust. Brother Yaoxing, where are you going in such a hurry? A green-clothed woman smiled sweetly. It was as if she had gathered all the beauty in the world. Her temperament was elegant and noble, like a saintess who had not been tainted by the mortal world. When the woman spoke, it would have been better if she had not smiled. But when she smiled, it was as if she could turn the world upside down. It made people feel dizzy. Li Fuyao, I advise you not to use the extreme emotion sky skill on me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Lu Yaoxing's expression was cold. A trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Lu Yaoxing cut the crap. Hand over the person. Boom. A black-clothed young man was surrounded by demonic light. He did not look very old, as if he was only 16 or 17 years old. However, the sky-swallowing demonic light that erupted caused the surrounding space to distort. This young man was not as simple as he appeared to be. Emojoyo, you have just reached the extreme realm. You are not qualified to talk to me. Lu Yaoxing said with disdain. You. Emojoyo's expression changed. He wanted to refute, but before he could say anything, Song Huaimie had already stepped forward with the same smile on his face. A worthy younger brother, Yaoxing, you know why we are here. Hand over the person. Do you really want us to fight? Song Huaimie smiled. Brother Yaoxing, of course we know that your space-time power is the chaotic extreme speed. However, this is the final place to return to the space-time temple. The 3 of us have been waiting here for a long time. Do you really think you are a match for the 3 of us? Li Fuyao said strangely. No need to talk nonsense with him. Let's snatch the person first. I don't believe that Lu Yaoxing can fight the 3 of us alone. Emojoyo said coldly. Rumble. The space-time skill soared into the sky. The power of time filled the sky. Lu Yaoxing was bursting with majestic power. His entire person became extremely terrifying. His hands seemed to be holding up the entire world. 2 balls of light formed by the power of space-time appeared in his palms. The terrifying power of space-time directly shattered the void in all directions, causing one's heart to palpitate at a glance. Chapter 1281. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He had seen everything that had just happened. Lu Yaoxing's cultivation gave him a new understanding of it. Terrifying to the extreme. They were both in the Yin realm. But Lu Yaoxing would be able to kill Violet Spirit with 1 strike. He would not have any difficulty in fighting her at all. At this moment, Yi Xian's view of the world had changed completely. He finally understood how terrifying the disciples of the strongest orthodoxies could be. Moreover, not only Lu Yaoxing, but the 3 people who had stopped them were all in the Yin realm. The one called Song Huaimie was surrounded by the power of destruction. He was obviously from the Immortal Heaven Palace. His cultivation should be on par with Lu Yaoxing. As for the other 2, although they were not as terrifying as Lu Yaoxing and Song Huaimie, they were not far behind. They were all monstrous figures. Yi Xian's blood was boiling. He was extremely excited. He had finally seen how powerful these monstrous geniuses were. This gave him a huge goal. Kill them. All of them would be crushed beneath their feet. Step on their corpses and move forward, until he reached the throne of the strongest throughout history. Yi Xian's eyes were burning. However, he kept calming himself down, because he knew that he was not their match. Brother Yao Xing, the last time we fought seemed to be 300,000 years ago. Today, let me see how much progress you have made in these 300,000 years. Rumble. Song Huaimiya took a step forward, and a terrifying spatial crack appeared beneath his feet. The light that could extinguish the world soared into the heavens, and the wind and clouds within millions of miles were wiped out without a trace. Destructive heavenly finger. Song Huaimiya's fingers were like the sky. It was as if he had pierced through the universe. The terrifying power of destruction turned into the heavenly demonic sword, and slashed towards Lu Yaoxing with the power to destroy everything. Destructive heavenly finger can be used like this? Yi Xian squinted his eyes and stared at Song Huaimiya's destructive grand art. His eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor. The immortal scripture naturally recorded this grand art. Yi Xian had also specially cultivated it. However, his destructive heavenly finger was too stiff, and the power it displayed was barely satisfactory. This made Yi Xian give up on this grand art. However, when he saw Song Huaimiya use this grand art, Yi Xian finally understood one thing. It was not that the destructive heavenly finger was not powerful, but the way he used it was wrong. Time heavenly blade. On the other side, Lu Yaoxing roared coldly. The energy of space transformed into a blade that blotted out the sky, and it slashed down towards Song Huaimiya as well. The heavenly soldiers crisscrossed, and the world became a vacuum. Just the collision of two great arts had flattened millions of miles of mountains and rivers. The boundless land sank for tens of thousands of feet, and clear water gushed out. Let's go. Lu Yaoxing abruptly retreated. The power of space and time shook as he brought Yi Xian along, and disappeared from this world. Want to leave? You can't leave if you don't leave them behind. Song Huaimiya steadied himself and immediately chased after Yi Xian. Li Fuyao and Embark followed closely behind. Bang! 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 Something terrifying happened. Lu Yaoxing and Yi Xian fled frantically across the boundless land. The three monstrous geniuses chased after them. Both sides blasted out grand arts from time to time, causing terrifying consequences. Mountains and rivers collapsed. Everything in the world collapsed. And it was even to the extent that cracks had appeared in the heavens and the earth for over 1 billion kilometers. Numerous spatial rifts had split open and shattered everything, and this scene of destruction was simply horrifying. Lu Yaoxing, you can't escape. Embark roared coldly and viciously blasted out a heaven-swallowing demonic light. However, Lu Yaoxing shattered it with a flip of his hand. His space-time power was unparalleled. A terrifying pursuit appeared in the sky. Lu Yaoxing's face was heavy and helpless. If he was alone, he could completely shake off the three of them. However, he had to bring along Yi Xian a burden. Hence, he couldn't shake them off. Hey, fellow Taoist Yao Xing. Didn't you tell me before that you had great ability? Why are you being chased like a stray dog now? Yi Xian intentionally mocked. Shut up. It's all because of you. It would have been better if Yi Xian didn't speak. His words made Lu Yaoxing's heart explode. With his cultivation, why should he be afraid of the three of them? Even Song Huaimiya's cultivation was only on par with his. If he hadn't been ordered to bring Yi Xian to the temporal temple, he would have definitely fought with the three of them. How could he possibly escape in such a sorry state? Yi Xian, let me tell you. If it wasn't for you, do you think I would be running away in such a sorry state? If the three of them had really surrounded me, I might have been able to leave alive. However, you might not. Lu Yaoxing became angrier as he spoke. His face was already extremely red. I didn't ask you to save me. Besides, other than Song Huaimiya, I still have confidence in fighting the other two. Yi Xian sneered. You're quite good at bragging. Do you think you're amazing for risking your life to kill a young birth realm cultivator? The three of them are all saints of the strongest orthodoxies. Even if Li Fuyao and Embark aren't as strong as Song Huaimiya, any one of them can kill you. Lu Yaoxing berated furiously. Look at how restless you are. Where's the elegance from before? Why don't we make a deal? You can deal with Song Huaimia and Li Fuyao alone. Leave the heaven-devouring devil palace's Emojuyo to me. We might not lose even if we join forces. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes, trying to persuade Lu Yaoxing to stop the battle. However, a strange and eerie light flashed across his eyes. This also startled Lu Yaoxing slightly before he came to his senses. Don't talk nonsense. The three of them came prepared. You're only at the second level of creation realm. Even if we join forces, we won't be able to defeat them. You can only escape danger if you return to the temporal temple. Lu Yaoxing rejected flatly. Looking at Lu Yaoxing's face, which clearly didn't trust him, Yi Xian sighed helplessly. He knew that his plan had failed, but there was nothing he could do. Actually, Yi Xian wasn't arrogant. If Lu Yaoxing agreed to his request, he would definitely be able to resist Emojuyo by himself. Even if the other party was a holy son of the extreme Yin realm, Yi Xian had a high chance of killing him. The reason was very simple. When he killed Earth Demon Luo, the Calamity Transcender technique restrained him. Yi Xian had a faint feeling that his Calamity Transcender technique should have a great restraining effect on the heaven-devouring demonic art. With his Chaos 12 Yuanhui world, even if Emojuyo was an extreme Yin saint, it wasn't impossible for him to kill the other party. Moreover, Emojuyo was obviously a saint of the heaven-devouring demonic palace. His cultivation was definitely stronger than the heavenly grip quartz master. If he could devour this person's cultivation, it would definitely allow Yi Xian to break through again. This was also the reason why Yi Xian proposed this. Unfortunately, Lu Yaoxing didn't trust him at all and decisively rejected his proposal. This made Yi Xian extremely disappointed. Chapter 1282. Nirvana Heaven and Earth. The clouds within a radius of millions of kilometers were destroyed, and countless mountains collapsed into ashes. The heavens and the earth instantly turned into a world of darkness, instantly sealing off their path of escape. A worthy younger brother Yaoxing, I said that the two of you can't leave. Song Huaimia suddenly attacked. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and he looked extraordinary. He was frowning as he stared at Yi Xian, a strange look flashing across his eyes from time to time. Chi, Li Fuyao and Emojuyo followed closely behind. The three of them surrounded Yi Xian and Emojuyo in a triangular formation. An extremely oppressive atmosphere grew in this world. This must be fellow Taoist Yi Xian. Lu Yaoxing won't be able to protect you. Moreover, my immortal heaven palace has no ill intentions towards you. Why do you need to walk with the people of the temporal temple? Song Huaimia said indifferently. Kid, I heard that you know the demonic heaven-devouring technique that I taught you. The demon lord wants to see you. Come with me. Emojuyo ordered arrogantly. Don't scare him. Why don't you come with me to the extreme emotion heavenly palace? I guarantee that I won't hurt you. Li Fuyao covered her mouth and laughed. Seeing this, Lu Yaoxing's expression turned cold. He took a step forward, causing the world to tremble. Cut the crap. The three of you can come at me together. Boom. The power of space-time rumbled, and the aura of time spread. A mottled ancient mirror appeared in Lu Yaoxing's hand. The aura of time was coming from this ancient mirror. Space-time divine mirror? A supreme divine weapon? When Lu Yaoxing took out the mottled ancient mirror, Li Fuyao and Emojuyo cried out in shock. They instantly retreated with great panic on their faces. What was a supreme divine weapon? A supreme divine weapon, as the name implied, was a weapon used by the strongest throughout history. This weapon could be said to be extremely sharp and had unimaginable power. Space-time divine mirror was the weapon of the Lord of Time and Space, which was why the two were so panicked. There's no need to panic. It's just an imitation. Song Huaimia frowned and hurriedly comforted the two of them. Sure enough, the two of them carefully sensed that the ancient mirror in Lu Yaoxing's hand was indeed a replica and did not contain any supreme power. This made the two of them breathe a sigh of relief. So what if it's a replica? It can still take the lives of the three of you. Lu Yaoxing's face was ice cold. The ancient mirror in his hand was releasing the power of time. Even though it wasn't a powerful weapon, It wasn't something a yin-yang plane cultivator could withstand. Lu Yaoxing, do you think I'm not prepared? Song Huaimie flipped his hand, and a demonic blade surrounded by black mist appeared in his hand. The terrifying power of nirvanic extermination was released to the extreme. It was as if the appearance of this blade could even destroy the world. Nirvana Heavenly Blade? Lu Yaoxing's expression changed slightly before returning to normal. That was because the item in his opponent's hand was also a replica. However, even though it was a replica, it was still troublesome. Song Huaimie and a replica of the Nirvana Heavenly Blade were enough to be on par with him. With Li Fuyao and Immortal left, they were enough to suppress him and Yi Xian. At this moment, Lu Yaoxing's expression was extremely heavy. He knew that if he really fought, he would definitely suffer a great loss. However, if he gave up on Yi Xian, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. A worthy younger brother, Yaoxing, I don't want to make things difficult for you. It's not too late for you to retreat now. Song Huaimie said confidently. Hey! Suddenly, Yi Xian walked forward slowly with a smile on his face. He looked at Song Huaimie and the other two. From the beginning to the end, he appeared to be at ease, as if he didn't know how dangerous the situation was. Yi Xian, what are you doing? Lu Yaoxing's expression changed. Unfortunately, Yi Xian chose to ignore him. Instead, he looked warmly at Song Huaimie and the other two and said, There are 3 of you here, and all of you want me to return to your respective orthodoxies. Then I'm very curious, which one of your 3 great orthodoxies should I go to? This, Yi Xian continued without speaking. The moment he spoke, Song Huaimie and the other two felt suffocated. A trace of vigilance flashed across their eyes. Clearly, Yi Xian was speaking the truth. Don't listen to his nonsense. He's trying to drive a wedge between the 3 of us. Song Huaimie instantly understood Yi Xian's goal, and hurriedly reminded the other two. TSK TSK TSK. Yi Xian curled his lips and said with a strange smile, You're right. I'm indeed trying to drive a wedge between the 3 of you. However, this is the truth. Am I wrong? Yi Xian openly admitted it. However, he looked at Li Fuyao and Immortal with pity and said, The 2 of you are really stupid. Song Huaimie is just using you. He has the Nirvana Heavenly Blade in his hand. Once he forces Lu Yaoxing away, he will definitely be able to ignore the 2 of you with his cultivation. Naturally, I will follow him to the Immortal Sky Palace. It's a pity that you don't even know that you're being used. I wonder how you'll explain yourself when you return to your orthodoxies. An open plot. A blatant open plot. An open plot without any concealment. Yi Xian's words were clearly trying to drive a wedge between the 3 of them. However, what he said was also the most practical problem. Even if the 3 of them knew that Yi Xian was trying to drive a wedge between them, this was indeed the most crucial problem. They couldn't help but think about it. Shut up. Song Huaimie's expression changed drastically as he shouted at Yi Xian. His face was ashen to the extreme. Brother Song Huaimie, I know that I'm no match for you. It seems like you really want to bring Yi Xian back to the Immortal Sky Palace, Li Fuyao said coldly. Song Huaimie, you're indeed up to no good. Why didn't you tell the 2 of us that you have a replica of the Nirvana Heavenly Blade on you? Immortal said coldly. Don't fall into his trap. Song Huaimie roared anxiously. Trap? Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very sinister as he said, Then tell me, which orthodoxy should I go to? You. Song Huaimie's expression was uncertain. He wanted to refute Yi Xian, but he didn't know how to do so. Indeed, he was using these 2 people. Once he captured Yi Xian, he would have an imitation of the Nirvana Heavenly Blade in his hands. Naturally, he would be able to bring Yi Xian back to the Undying Heavenly Palace to complete the mission. This was originally his plan, but now that Yi Xian had pointed it out, the matter had become extremely difficult to handle. Look, the 2 of you. He's guilty. Yi Xian chuckled. Song Huaimie, you're indeed up to no good. Li Fuyao and Immortal looked at each other and scolded angrily. At this moment, Lu Yaoxing's expression was extremely complicated. A trace of vigilance flashed across his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian. He never thought that the 2 of them would be in a predicament because of Yi Xian's few words. This guy is so shrewd. I have to be more careful in the future. Otherwise, I'll definitely fall into his hands. Lu Yaoxing immediately became vigilant. Yi Xian's cultivation wasn't high, but he was too cunning. This blatant scheme could kill without spilling blood. Chapter 1283. Why don't I give the two of you an idea? He has such a powerful weapon. As long as the two of you join forces to fight him and snatch the Nirvana heavenly blade from his hands, you two will be able to defeat Lu Yaoxing with this blade. At that time, the two of you can discuss whether to go to the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace or the Sky-Devouring Demonic Palace. It's better than the four of you fighting for it, right? Yi Xian's words were bewitching. His words made Li Fuyao and Imo Jiuyo's expressions change. The two of them knew that Yi Xian was trying to drive a wedge between them, but they felt that Yi Xian's words made sense. Attack! Imo Jiuyo suddenly roared and unleashed his sky-devouring demonic skill. He was the first to attack Song Huaimia. Seeing this, Li Fuyao no longer hesitated, and the two of them instantly charged towards Song Huaimia. Are the two of you idiots? Song Huaimia's face was ashen as he shouted at the two of them. However, he didn't dare to be careless in the face of the two monstrous Sky Pride's attacks. He immediately wielded the Nirvana Heavenly Blade to block the attacks. Rumble! The three of them instantly clashed, and the terrifying power that erupted was simply shocking. Your cultivation is not bad, but it's a pity that you've become stupid from cultivating. Your temperament is so childish that it's pitiful. Yi Xian shook his head in disdain. In terms of cultivation, Yi Xian was indeed inferior to the three of them. However, in terms of scheming, the three of them couldn't even catch up to him. After all, Yi Xian had climbed all the way from the bottom to where he was now. He had experienced countless hardships and tribulations, and he was an extremely black-bellied old fox. How could these three be his match? Why are you still standing there like fools? If you don't leave now, are you going to wait for the outcome of their battle to be decided? Yi Xian took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Lu Yaoxing. He slapped Lu Yaoxing hard and woke him up instantly. You what? Let's go. Rumble! The power of time and space rumbled as Yi Xian pulled Lu Yaoxing away in an instant. This also caused Lu Yaoxing to be surprised to discover that although Yi Xian's speed wasn't as fast as his, the power of time and space was extremely pure. When the two of them connected, their speed actually doubled. Qi. Shuttling through time and space, the two of them traveled at a terrifying speed. The two space-time divine trees swayed above their heads. The time and space qi that converged together made their speed unimaginable. Your space-time powers are so powerful. Why didn't you lend me a hand on the Starlight boat? As the two of them fled, Lu Yaoxing roared in rage. He felt like he had been played by Yi Xian like a monkey. If they had known that Yi Xian's space-time power was so pure, the three of them would not have been able to stop them. Didn't you tell me that no one can stop us with you around? Why should I help you control the Starlight skiff? Yi Xian said calmly. You? Lu Yaoxing's face turned red. He was so angry that he could not speak. Then, he activated his space-time power and rushed towards the temporal temple. He did not want to talk to Yi Xian anymore, because he was really afraid that Yi Xian would explode from anger. On the other side, the three of them fought fiercely. The world around them was collapsing inch by inch. The battle was extremely intense. They have run away. You two idiots. Song Huaimia slashed out and quickly distanced himself from the two. This also made Li Fuyao and Imo Jiuyo realize that Yi Xian and Lu Yaoxing were already far away. Damn it! Imo Jiuyo roared in rage. I already said that this is his plan to drive a wedge between us. You are still unaware that you have been played by him. Song Huaimia was so angry that he wanted to kill the two of them. Chase after them. We must not let them return to the temporal temple. Li Fuyao was embarrassed and angry. He knew that he had made a big mistake and chased after Yi Xian. Boom! The three of them stopped arguing and chased after Yi Xian. However, their faces were extremely pale. This time, they would definitely teach Yi Xian a lesson when they caught up with him. Shame, a great shame. The three of them were monstrous geniuses, but they had been played by Yi Xian. This was simply unacceptable. Unfortunately, the three of them were still a step too late. When Yi Xian and Lu Yaoxing activated their space-time power, the three of them could not catch up to them at all. After all, the space-time power was extremely fast. The delay just now had caused the three of them to lose their last chance. Ancient times were like the sky. Time flowed like a tide. An ancient temple stretched across the sky. The aura of time filled the sky and earth. There was also the sound of an ancient bell reverberating in the sky. It was as if the sound of the bell had traveled through the ages, causing one's soul to tremble slightly. Sutras were chanted in the sky. The ancient temple was illusory and seemed to exist between heaven and earth, but also seemed to be detached from heaven and earth. It gave people a feeling of uncertainty. This was the land of time. This was the place of space-time. This was a supreme orthodoxy. It was also the temporal temple that had experienced the 7 great periods of time. The ancient bell was ringing, and the waves of time were rolling. In the mottled aura of time, there seemed to be a recording of ancient history engraved in the void of the heavens. We're here. Whoosh! Ripples bloomed in the void, and 2 figures suddenly walked out from the ripples. They were already standing outside the clouds. A mottled stone door appeared in front of them. As long as they stepped through the stone door, they would be able to enter the space-time temple. Let's go. Lu Yaoxing finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the temporal temple. He took the lead and walked towards the stone door. This also caused the smile on Yi Xian's face to gradually disappear. His expression gradually became solemn. Behind this door was the space-time temple that had existed since ancient times. The legendary space-time master was here. Perhaps everything in his future would change greatly here. Yi Xian strolled through the stone door of time and finally entered the temporal temple. After a dozen breaths, 3 figures suddenly attacked. However, the 3 of them looked at the stone door of time in front of them with fear on their faces. Damn it! Song Huaimia roared in anger. He has entered the temporal temple. Everything is settled. Li Fuyao said helplessly. Let's also enter the temporal temple. Mo Juyo said coldly. Ignorant. This is the temporal temple. Do you think it's the heaven-devouring evil hall, where you can walk as you wish? Not to mention the legendary space-time master. Any supreme being can kill the 3 of us. Song Huaimia scolded coldly. Then what do we do now? Mo Juyo said with an ashen face. What do we do? Song Huaimia said coldly. Unless this person stays in the temporal temple forever. As long as he takes half a step out of the temporal temple, we will definitely suppress him. For now, let's return to our orthodoxies and inform them of this matter. Song Huaimia was an extremely decisive person. He turned and left without any delay. Lingering outside the temporal temple was extremely disrespectful. Although he was a saint's son of the Immortal Heaven Palace, he was definitely not in the eyes of the temporal temple. Seeing Song Huaimia leave, the 2 of them were speechless and could only leave. However, this matter wasn't over yet. They could only return to their orthodoxies to report the situation. Chapter 1284. Inside the ancient palace, the flow of time surged. The laws of time and the laws of space intersected, creating a magnificent scene of time, causing people to feel great reverence when they looked at it. Lu Yaoxing led the way while Yi Xian slowly followed. From time to time, he would size up the legendary temporal temple, and from time to time, a trace of surprise would flash through his eyes. The spiritual energy in the temporal temple was thin, but the laws of time and space were extremely dense. Yi Xian was certain that if he could cultivate here for a long time, his power of time and space would improve qualitatively. However, Yi Xian found it strange that he did not see anyone along the way. The entire temporal temple seemed peaceful and peaceful. Occasionally, he would see a few figures flitting by in the distance, but they would disappear in the next moment. My temporal temple has existed since ancient times, but it does not have many disciples. In total, there are only a few thousand people in the temporal temple. As if sensing Yi Xian's doubts, Lu Yaoxing explained the origins of the temporal temple to Yi Xian. A few thousand people? Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. He was even more curious about the temporal temple now. Yi Xian did not know much about the other strongest orthodoxies, but he had stayed in the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace before. Not to mention the hundreds of millions of divine soldiers. Just the number of disciples in the 10,000 spirit sky palace was enough. However, the temporal temple, which was ranked in the top 3, only had a few thousand disciples. It was unbelievable. However, Yi Xian understood after thinking about it for a while. Although the temporal temple only had a few thousand people, every one of them was definitely extraordinary. The two of them chatted as they walked. Soon, they arrived at the depths of the temporal temple. There were thousands of ancient palaces in front of them, surrounded by a dense power of time and space. Rumble. The palace's doors opened with a rumble. The power of time and space roared out, causing a whirlwind to blow. The surrounding objects were faintly distorted. Yaoxing. A heavy voice sounded out from the palace. The voice was calm, but when it entered Yi Xian's ears, it caused his soul to tremble and his heart to churn with monstrous waves. Master, I have brought them here. Lu Yaoxing bowed, looking extremely humble. All right, let him in. This voice sounded out once more, causing Lu Yaoxing to look at Yi Xian and say, I'll send you here. Master is waiting for you in the palace. You can go now. Your master is the space-time master? Yi Xian probed. Lu Yaoxing was stunned when he heard Yi Xian's words, and then he smiled bitterly. My master's name is Yuan Kong, and he's the space-time hall master of this Yuan Hui. He's not the space-time hall master, and no one can become the space-time hall master's disciple. How could I have such good fortune? Lu Yaoxing paused slightly and murmured in a daze. However, I've heard of a legend before. The space-time master really did accept a disciple, but that's only a legend. I don't know if it's true. All right, master is waiting for you in the palace. When you see him, answer whatever he asks. My space-time temple will not bully the weak. You can rest assured. Lu Yaoxing turned and left after saying that. Yi Xian frowned, and there was great disappointment in his eyes. He had come to the space-time temple to see the space-time master, but the person inside was the space-time hall master of this Yuan Hui. This was not in line with his original intentions. Little friend Yi, please come in for a chat. While Yi Xian was deep in thought, Yuan Kong's voice came again. This woke Yi Xian up instantly, and he entered the palace without any hesitation. Inside the palace, stone pillars stood tall, and the walls were engraved with profound runes. These runes seemed to contain the way of space-time, and they gave off an ancient feeling. An azure-robed old man sat in the center of the palace. He had black hair and a black beard, and he was silent. He only had a kind smile on his face as he looked at Yi Xian. Without a doubt, this person should be Lu Yaoxing's master Yuan Kong. He was also the space-time temple master of the 10th Yuan Hui. If Yi Xian's guess was correct, the old man's cultivation was at least at the immortal realm. Yi Xian greets Yuan Kong temple master. Yi Xian slowly walked forward and cupped his fists at Yuan Kong. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Little friend, your cultivation is profound. You can cultivate the power of space-time without my clan's cultivation technique. And you've even condensed the space-time divine tree. Just this talent alone makes you worthy of becoming my sect's holy son. Yuan Kong temple master nodded approvingly. Holy son. Yi Xian frowned. Was this old man trying to recruit him into the space-time temple? However, although you've cultivated the space-time divine tree, it's a pity that you don't have a proper method to use it. As long as you're willing to join my space-time temple, I can teach you everything I know. Yuan Kong temple master smiled. He did not hide his intentions to recruit Yi Xian. You might have misunderstood. I'm not willing to come to the space-time temple with Lu Yaoxing to join your sect. I just want to see the space-time master. Yi Xian was not a long-winded person. He directly stated his objective. Just as I thought. Yuan Kong temple master was not surprised at all by Yi Xian's words. Instead, he shook his head with a bitter smile, as a sliver of disappointment flashed through his eyes. Little friend, do you know that the master of my clan is the ruler of primal chaos? Even other ancient sovereigns would find it extremely difficult to meet him. Yuan Kong temple master paused slightly, before looking at Yi Xian with mixed feelings. He said, however, the space-time master has already instructed me to send you to see him, if you come to the space-time temple. Little friend Yi, This is a great fortune for you. Even I've only seen him once. I hope you can cherish this opportunity. The space-time master was the only ruler of primal chaos, let alone Yuankong Temple Master. Even the previous temple masters rarely got to see him. Yuankong Temple Master envied Yi Xian to no end now that the space-time master had personally summoned him. Where is the space-time master? Yi Xian's face lit up. As long as he could see the space-time master, he might be able to solve many of his puzzling secrets. The space-time master roams the primal chaos. No one knows where he is, but I have a jade tablet here. He bestowed this jade tablet upon me, so that I can send you to see him. Yuankong Temple Master took out a jade tablet and crushed it with some reluctance. Space-time immediately revolved in his hand before forming a gate of light before the two of them. Go on. Enter this gate and you'll be able to see him, Yuankong Temple Master growled. Thank you, Temple Master. Yi Xian no longer hesitated. He strode into the gate of space. As Yi Xian entered, the gate immediately closed and Yi Xian completely vanished from Yuankong Temple Master's sight. Who is he? Why has the space-time master personally summoned him? Yuankong Temple Master murmured. He became more and more curious about Yi Xian. This was because he could tell with a single glance that Yi Xian was only immortal. The three realms of creation were his limits. Although Yi Xian had cultivated space-time techniques and was proficient in other supreme techniques, that was all there was to it. With the space-time master's identity, why would he pay attention to such an insignificant person? Chapter 1285. The heavens and earth spun as space and time changed. This was a quiet mountain village. Green mountains, clear waters, and grass grew everywhere. A small stream flowed at the foot of the mountain, and the trees in the forest swayed with the wind. There was even smoke rising from the houses at the foot of the mountain. In the clear water of the stream, fish jumped out of the water, wanting to swim to the highest heavens. But no matter how hard they swung their tails, they still fell back into the stream. The merciless waves drowned the fish. The stream followed an unchanging law and continued to flow downstream. The fish wanted to swim upstream, but they were exhausted and could only go with the flow. Beside the stream, grass grew everywhere. On the ancient path, there was an endless stream of villagers. Yi Xian stared at the scene in front of him in a daze. He didn't know if this was an illusion, or if it was real. A villager walked past Yi Xian, passing through his body. This caused Yi Xian to instantly wake up. He knew that the scene in front of him was an illusion. Yi Xian frowned. He walked along the banks of the stream. He believed that the space-time master would not be so bored as to create an illusion to confuse him. This was because with the space-time master's status and cultivation, there was no need for him to do so. Time passed quickly. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yi Xian arrived at the end of the stream. He saw a black-clothed man sitting cross-legged at the end of the stream. This person's back was facing Yi Xian, making it impossible to see his appearance. He held a fishing rod in his hand, and his entire person seemed tranquil and peaceful, as if he were waiting for a fish to take the bait. The space-time master. Just by looking at the black-clothed man's back, Yi Xian was sure that this was the space-time master he was looking for. There was no imposing aura, nor was there any so-called power of space-time. But just by looking at this black-clothed man, Yi Xian felt like he was the only existence in the world. A gentle breeze brushed past his face, and the green willows hung in the shade. Yi Xian walked step by step towards the black-clothed man. When he arrived behind the black-clothed man, a scene that terrified Yi Xian was reflected in his eyes. How could there be any fish in the stream? The vast universe and the chaotic stars were actually a boundless chaotic universe in this stream. Countless chaotic stars rotated in the stream, and the black-robed man seemed to be fishing for the stars in the sky. Terrifying. Terrifying to the extreme. Yi Xian was completely shocked by this scene, and did not recover for a long time. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood what it meant to be the strongest throughout the ages. The black-robed man in front of him gave him a very good explanation. Sigh. Vicissitudes of life and helplessness, sorrowful and mournful. This sigh seemed to have transcended several yuan hui. The sigh of unwillingness and helplessness was affecting Yi Xian's mind. The next moment the black-clothed man slowly turned around, his face reflected in Yi Xian's eyes. His long black hair fluttered behind his head, his chiseled cheeks were slightly cold, and his black eyes were like the stars in the universe. He was dressed in black, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he sat cross-legged in front of Yi Xian. When Yi Xian saw the black-clothed man's face, he suddenly came to his senses. A bitter smile appeared on his delicate face, and then he also sat cross-legged in front of the black-clothed man. You've come. Vicissitudes of life and tranquility, gentle and not lacking in harmony. These 3 short words revealed the temperament of the vicissitudes of time. Who was he? He was the space-time master. The space-time master who suppressed the chaos and suppressed the past and present. He had existed since time immemorial, and was the only one throughout the ages. He was known as one of the 3 strongest people in the 12 Yuanhui periods of the Chaos Verse, the space-time master. You knew I was coming? Yi Xian slowly said, an inexplicable look in his eyes. For some reason, although this was the first time Yi Xian had seen the space-time master, he felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if he had seen the space-time master before in an unknown period of time. There was no reason for this feeling, but it truly existed in Yi Xian's heart. It gave Yi Xian an extremely strange feeling. In truth, before Yi Xian had seen the space-time master, he had been very nervous. After all, the space-time master was a legendary figure, one of the 3 strongest existences in the Chaos Verse. Even though Yi Xian had a strong will, he still felt somewhat uneasy. If it were anyone else sitting across from this legendary figure, they would probably feel as if they were sitting on pins and needles, or perhaps they would kowtow in reverence. But it was this familiar feeling that made Yi Xian feel extremely calm. It was as if the person sitting in front of him wasn't one of the most terrifying existences of all time, but an old friend of many years. A glance at spacetime, illusory flowers. When their gazes met, the spacetime master laughed loudly, and Yi Xian couldn't help but smile. Even Yi Xian didn't know why he was smiling. You're not too late, but you're not too early either, the space-time master said slowly. I have many questions, and I hope you can answer them for me. I believe that in the entire Chaos Verse, there are only a few people who can answer my questions, and you should be one of them, Yi Xian said in a low voice. Logically speaking, Yi Xian should have addressed the space-time master as senior, or some other form of respect. After all, the space-time master in front of him was one of the most powerful existences of all time. But for some reason, Yi Xian didn't do that. Instead, he spoke to the space-time master in a tone that even he found strange. There was no reason for this feeling, but Yi Xian felt that it was extremely natural. It was as if, in an unknown period of time, he had once spoken to the space-time master in such a manner. A gentle breeze brushed past his face, and a small stream gurgled. The space-time master slowly rose to his feet, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the distant mountain village. A sorrowful aura began to bloom around him. This illusion is the place where I was born. The creatures of the primordial chaos refer to me as the space-time master, but that isn't my true name. The space-time master didn't answer his question. He slowly turned to look at Yi Xian. Follow me. The space-time master was dressed in black robes, and his black hair fluttered in the wind as he strolled towards the mountain village. Yi Xian stared at the space-time master's bleak and desolate figure, a look of surprise and bewilderment appearing in his eyes. Yi Xian followed the space-time master's footsteps. The 2 of them walked side by side, heading towards the mountain village. This was Immortal Mountain Village. It was currently noon, and in the middle of the desolate fields, a young man and a young woman were chasing each other, appearing completely carefree and innocent. Hee! Cheerful laughter rang out. The young woman's eyes were like stars, bright and full of expression. She constantly ran through the wheat fields, and behind her was a simple-minded young man who couldn't stop giggling as he chased after her. Don't chase me anymore. I'm exhausted. The young woman stopped running and leaned against the wheat fields, constantly gasping for breath. The simple-minded young man was still giggling. He sat close to the young woman, his eyes full of happiness. Goa! My father wants to take me to the black-yellow sect to be a maid. I'm afraid I won't be able to see you again in the future. The young woman's face was gloomy, and her words were filled with sorrow. Hearing the young woman's words, the silly smile on the young man's face disappeared. He stared at the young woman in a daze, a trace of moisture appearing in his eyes. He tightly grasped the young woman's small hand and choked with sobs. Xianxiao, can you not go to the black-yellow sect? Sensing the young man's sorrow, the young woman forced a smile. Silly, I'm only going to be a maid. It's not like I won't be able to see you again. I'll come back to see you every year. As the young woman's words fell, the young man fell silent. In the end, he could only nod helplessly. In truth, he didn't want the young woman to leave. Chapter 1286. Goa, you're so silly. How can Xianxiao marry you when she grows up? The girl whispered shyly and ran home. Marry me. The young man muttered to himself in the wheat field. It took him a full 10 breaths to recover. Xianxiao said she wants to marry me? The young man suddenly jumped up with an excited smile on his face. Ha ha ha. Xianxiao said she wants to marry me. She wants to marry me. The young man ran happily through the wilderness, his youthful figure showing great vitality. His entire being was surrounded by happiness, his excited voice echoing through the fields. At this moment, the space-time lord stood with his hands behind his back. A nostalgic smile appeared on his cold face. However, if one looked carefully, they would notice that there was a hint of self-mockery and bitterness in the space-time lord's eyes. The strange look disappeared in an instant, and the space-time lord calmed down again. However, Yi Xian was very observant, so he naturally noticed the space-time lord's strange behavior. This also surprised Yi Xian. Why did this young man and woman make the space-time lord show such an expression? Time accelerated and the scene changed. Outside the ancient road of the mountain village, a carriage stopped there. A young girl with tears in her eyes held the young man's hand. Following her father's constant urging and roaring, the young girl helplessly stepped into the carriage to the dark yellow sect. Goa, you must wait for me to come back. Xianxiao will definitely marry you. The carriage left a cloud of dust in the air. The young girl lifted the bamboo curtain and cried to the young man with a tear-stained face. Looking at the carriage gradually disappearing into the distance, and hearing the young girl's determined cry, the young man's face was dull. After a full 10 breaths, he suddenly ran in the direction of the young girl in the carriage. The young man kept chasing behind the carriage. He did not know how long he had run, or how far he had chased. He lost his straw sandals, and the soles of his feet were covered in bloody blisters. Finally, he fell on the dirt road with a plop. Xianxiao, I will definitely wait for you to come back and marry you. The young man's tears fell like rain. He crawled on the dirt road and watched the carriage disappear into the distance, murmuring in a daze. Looking at the scene in front of him, Yi Xian frowned, as if he had noticed something. He glanced at the space-time lord from the corner of his eye, and saw him shaking his head and smiling bitterly. Love. Ha! Yi Xian was calm and silent, but his heart was slightly moved. The love between a young man and a young woman was simply laughable in his eyes. This scene was extremely similar to what had happened to him back then. They were childhood sweethearts. Looking at this young couple, Yi Xian felt as if he was looking at him and Xia Qingzhu when they were young. Both of them had made a solemn vow of undying love, but the final result was self-evident. Time was like a butcher's knife, cutting off the years and the past. People would always change with time. This was an eternal principle. Under the erosion of time, the so-called love was not even worth mentioning. This was also the most laughable thing of all. Yi Xian did not know why the Lord of Time and Space wanted him to see this image, but Yi Xian could vaguely guess who the youth in the image was. Wang. Time flew by, and the scene sped up. 3 years later, the once tender youth had now grown much taller. His once youthful appearance was gradually fading, but it could not take away the innocence in his heart. He was still him, but 3 years had passed. Was the young woman still the young woman of the past? The youth sat at the foot of the wall outside the mountain village. He stared blankly at the end of the dirt path, his eyes filled with anticipation and hope. Even after 3 years, he still harbored hope, waiting for the young woman to appear. This was because the two of them had made a vow that the day the young woman returned would be the day she would marry him. The moon rose and the sun set, and the stars moved. When night fell, starlight sprinkled down from the sky, causing the youth to stagger back home with a mournful expression. 3 years was neither long nor short for mortals. But the young woman did not return to the mountain village as promised, nor did she send a letter to the youth. But the youth still firmly believed that the young woman would not lie to him. He would wait for the young woman to return and witness their solemn vow of undying love. Haha, so much blood food. Kill them all. The night was dark and the wind was strong. Roars shook the sky, and cruel and savage laughter broke the silence of the mountain village. Hundreds of demon cultivators entered the mountain village, like a swarm of locusts. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they killed anyone they saw. Dozens of thatched cottages were set ablaze, and under the illumination of the fire and blood, the entire mountain village resounded with miserable cries. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned slightly. It seemed that the unforeseen event had originated from here. Wang. Suddenly, Yi Xian's expression changed. He felt his heart tremble, and he immediately looked at the space-time master. Only then did he realize that the space-time master's face was ice-cold, and he was staring at a thatched cottage at the entrance of the village. Bang! The demon cultivators kicked the thatched cottage away. Following the sound of wailing and begging for mercy, the youth's parents were dragged out by the demon cultivators. The demon cultivators even grabbed the youth by the neck and dragged him along the ground like a dead dog. At this moment, Yi Xian was finally certain that the youth in this scene of time was definitely the space-time master of the past. Otherwise, the space-time master would not have been so moved by this scene. However, Yi Xian did not expect that the space-time master, one of the 3 most powerful people in the chaotic universe, would be called a dog in his youth. If this matter were to spread, the jaws of all living beings in the chaotic universe would drop. No one would believe such a thing. Are his parents dead? Yi Xian asked in a low voice. This will be my eternal regret. The space-time master finally calmed down and spoke softly. However, if one listened carefully, they would discover that he seemed to be somewhat exhausted. In the center of the mountain village, a large number of villagers were gathered in one place. The thatched cottages in the village had been completely turned into a sea of fire. The blazing flames soared into the sky, and today was destined to be a sleepless night. The youth and his parents were in the center of the village. The demon cultivators' cruel massacre had officially begun. No matter how the villagers cried and begged, the demon cultivators still mercilessly killed them one by one. The youth's parents were filled with despair. His mother whispered something to the youth, causing him to bite his lips and shake his head. The youth's expression was mournful. He struggled to get up, but his father suddenly waved his hand and knocked him unconscious. The two of them laid the youth flat on the ground, and then looked directly at the demon cultivators. As a large number of villagers died tragically, the youth's parents were unable to escape this calamity. However, before they died, they pressed the youth tightly under their bodies. Large amounts of blood dyed the youth's body red. In the end, he had escaped the demon cultivators' murderous fate. The mountain village was deathly silent. The demon cultivators had retreated, leaving only the scarlet blood flowing on the mountain. The afterglow of the flames flickered in the wind from time to time. When the first rays of the morning sun shone down on the mountain village, the youth slowly opened his eyes. He pushed away the corpses of his parents and stared blankly at everything in front of him. In the end, he could not help but burst into tears. His heart-wrenching cries reverberated throughout the world. Chapter 1287. Outside the mountain village, dozens of tombs appeared here. The young man's hands were badly mutilated. Obviously, these tombs were dug out with his hands. The young man stood quietly in front of his parents' tombs. From sunrise to sunset, from sunset to sunrise, he seemed to have turned into an ancient stone statue, completely devoid of human vitality. Suddenly, whoosh, time was like a song, traveling alone through the ages. The sky gradually cracked, and a long river of time that ran through ancient times rumbled and surged. A figure was moving forward in the tide of time. This figure was blurred, making it impossible to see his face. Under the surging waves of time, he slowly walked up to the young man. How is this possible? When this scene appeared in front of Yi Xian's eyes, even if Yi Xian's heart was like a rock, he was shocked to the extreme at this moment, because this figure that walked out of the long river of time was simply too familiar to him. Yi Xian was instantly in a mess. The future self. How could it be the future self? Yi Xian stared at the future self, and the young man in the illusion of time. An indescribable feeling grew in his heart, which also made Yi Xian unable to understand what was happening in front of him. In the illusion of time, the mysterious shadow stood with his hands behind his back. His appearance did not affect the young man at all. The young man just stared blankly at the tombs of his parents and villagers, as if he had lost his soul. The chaotic universe, the 12 periods. The third period has just begun. You will eventually experience thousands of tribulations and difficulties. If you don't have great sorrow in your heart, how can you understand the future? The mysterious figure spoke in a low voice while a wisp of lonely and bleak aura flashed through his body. And he seemed to be slightly sorrowful as he said, I have a technique here that will allow you to take revenge. But you have to agree to a condition of mine. Help me do something in the future. The young man turned around and looked at the black shadow. He did not say a word from beginning to end. He slowly shook his head and did not make a sound. Then, he looked in the direction of the dark yellow sect. The light of hope bloomed in his eyes again, and he staggered into the distance. As the saying goes, love is like the moon in the water, and beauties are nothing more than pink skeletons. Since you insist on looking for her, then go and take a look. When your heart dies, I will appear again. The mysterious shadow sighed and gradually disappeared between heaven and earth. Looking at this scene, Yi Xian was speechless for a long time. His future self's words coincided with his thoughts, but Yi Xian did not know why his future self would appear in front of the young spacetime master. What was he trying to do? The dark yellow sect. Yi Xian had never heard of this Tao orthodoxy. Presumably, this Tao orthodoxy had also disappeared over the years. The scene changed again, and time sped up. A vast ancient city appeared before Yi Xian's eyes. Clearly, this was the black-yellow sect's encampment. The young man in the picture was dressed in rags, and he was searching for the beautiful woman in his heart in the city. But after several months, he still found nothing. His clothes were ragged, and his whole body stank. The young man looked like a little beggar. Every day, he sat on both sides of the street and begged for money. He constantly asked the passers-by about the girl's whereabouts, hoping to see the girl in his heart. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps the heavens were moved by the young man. Finally, one day, a luxurious jade carriage passed by him. As the bamboo curtain was lifted, a graceful woman walked out of the carriage. She was followed by a dozen or so guards, who changed from arrogance to deference, who continuously distributed the wealth in their hands to the beggars. The young man was among the beggars. He stared at the noble woman in front of him in a daze. His eyes were already red. He kept pushing away the beggars around him, and staggered toward the girl. Xianxiao. The young man had been looking forward to this call for 3 years. It was the only hope for the young man to live. Heaven did not let down those who waited. He finally found the love of his life. The young man's call was like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens, causing the young girl to freeze in place. Many passers-by couldn't block their gazes. This young man and woman had been separated for 3 years, and now they were finally reunited in this vast sea of people in mysterious yellow city. Go. Go. The girl trembled and murmured. Her face was pale, and she was slightly at a loss. She looked at the young man with joy and extreme panic. Madam, who is he? All of a sudden, a young man in a luxurious robe walked out of the jade carriage. This person was handsome and extraordinary. His whole body emitted the aura of a superior. Judging from his cultivation, he was already at the extreme realm. My husband, I'm not feeling well. I'd better go back to the sect. The girl's face was pale. She did not look at the young man, and turned to enter the jade carriage. My husband. Although the girl's voice was low, the young man still heard it. He seemed to have turned into a clay statue. He stared at the young man in the luxurious robe in a daze, and could not speak for a long time. If he is your husband, then who am I? The young man murmured, and then roared at the girl in the jade carriage. Whack! A whip suddenly hit the young man, and a bloody whip mark appeared on the young man's back. You stinky beggar, the young sect master's wife is kind. She specially helped you mortal beggars on this trip. It's fine if you don't know how to be grateful. But how dare you blaspheme her? I think you're courting death. A cultivator dressed as a servant kept hitting the young man with the whip in his hand, and cursing loudly. Countless whip shadows fell on the young man's body, but he did not seem to feel any pain. He just kept roaring at the girl in the carriage with tears in his eyes. As the young man roared angrily, the girl's crying came from the carriage, which made the young man in the luxurious robe gloomy. Stop hitting him. He's just a crazy beggar. Let's go back. The girl's crying voice came from the jade carriage. The young man in the luxurious robe no longer looked at the young man, and turned back to the jade carriage. However, before entering the jade carriage, he gave the guard beside him a subtle look. The jade carriage slowly drove away, and the onlookers also dispersed. The topic of a crazy beggar blaspheming the young sect master's wife also spread in the Xianhuang city. Night fell, and dark clouds covered the sky. Tonight's night sky was covered by dark clouds, just like the young man's mood. There was no trace of dawn. The young man sat in the ruined temple in a daze. A middle-aged man dressed as a guard came, and took the young man away. Ho! The space-time lord chuckled, but his laughter was very self-deprecating. This made Yi Xian sigh helplessly. He never thought that the space-time lord in his youth would have such a bumpy experience. Love was the most harmful of all. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an ancient saying that heroes had a weakness for beauties. Even the space-time lord was not exempt from this. Yi Xian had already faintly guessed what would happen next, but he could only continue watching. He believed that once he finished watching everything, he might be able to understand what the space-time lord wanted to tell him. However, Yi Xian vaguely realized that the appearance of his future self must have some meaning behind it that he couldn't understand. It was likely that it was filled with things that he couldn't imagine. Life was like morning dew, like a dream, like an illusion. Looking at the youth of the strongest powerhouse of all time, and seeing the appearance of his future self, Yi Xian believed that the things contained within would not be so simple. He feared that it would have an unimaginable connection to him. Chapter 1288. The Dark Yellow Sect. The young man's clothes were ragged, and his body stank. He stared at the girl who had become a married woman, and the pain in his heart had reached its peak. Why? The young man murmured. He wanted an answer that would not make him give up. He really hoped that the young girl would tell him that she was forced to marry that man, and that she was not willing to marry that man. What a pity. In the end, the young man was disappointed. Her panicked face slowly calmed down, and a cold expression appeared on her face. The girl's cold aura seemed to have stimulated the young man. His body trembled, and he was speechless. Puppy, you and I were young back then. It was just a child's joke. Don't take it seriously, the girl said coldly. Plop. The young man fell to the ground powerlessly. He clenched his fists, and his nails dug into his palms. Blood flowed out, but he didn't realize it. He looked at the girl with eyes full of despair. As if she didn't dare to look at the young man, the girl turned her head and said self-mockingly, "You have never experienced despair, and you don't know the cruelty of this world. Do you know that after I entered the Dark Yellow Sect, I was just a little maid? I was bullied, beaten and scolded by the disciples. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have survived. It was him who saved me, and he killed all the people who bullied me. When I finally woke up from the illusory dream, the childish Xianxiao was already dead." Xianxiao was immersed in her memories, and she kept talking about her past. When she mentioned that man, she was in high spirits, and her eyes were full of admiration. "This world is not as beautiful as you think. It is full of cruelty. My husband is the young hierarch of the Dark Yellow Sect, and he has already stepped into the Yin realm. In the future, he will compete for the seat of the strongest in the third Yuanhui. I am proud to have such a husband," the girl said coldly. She turned to look at the young man, and the aura around her became colder. Xianxiao. The young man in a luxurious robe walked over. He gently took the girl into his arms. Husband, he's an old friend of mine from my childhood. Don't take his words seriously. The young girl snuggled into the young man's embrace and spoke softly. I've never doubted you. Since he's an old friend of yours, let him stay in the Xianhuang sect. I'll instruct the people in the sect to teach him cultivation methods. It'll also be a way to put an end to the past between you and him. The young man in the luxurious robe said in a deep voice. Thank you, husband. Xianxiao has the same intention. The knot in the young girl's heart that had been troubling her for many years was undone. She smiled and completely transformed into the young cult master's wife. She no longer had the appearance of an innocent young girl. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, the youth laughed maniacally. His hoarse and mournful laughter resounded throughout the courtyard. He slowly stood up and looked at the couple. His eyes were filled with a deathly stillness. Unparalleled cultivation base? Such great power? A cruel world? Because this person can protect you. And is that what you want? The young man laughed maniacally. He suddenly turned around and staggered out of the room, no longer looking at the two of them. My loved ones are gone. My true love is gone. Let all of this go with the wind. In the howling wind between heaven and earth, the voice of the young man's heart was heard. The dog of the past was dead. But from this moment on, there was another peerless figure in the world. Yi Xian watched this scene silently. A hint of helplessness flashed across his face. The experience of the space-time lord in his youth was very similar to his to a large extent. Outside the Xianhuang city, the long river of time once again pierced through the sky. In the rumbling waves of time, the mysterious phantom walked out once again. What do you need me to do? The young man didn't know who the mysterious phantom was. But he didn't need to know now, because he only knew that the person in front of him could give him a chance to reverse himself. Before you achieve the Tao, I'll tell you my conditions, the mysterious phantom said softly. A bit of the power of time and space was injected into the young man's body. The mysterious phantom took a deep look at the young man, and then disappeared between heaven and earth again. Millions of years later, there was time and space in the world. Time covered the past and the present. All Taoists bowed their heads and traversed the world. The power of time swept across the 5 regions of chaos. Even the foreign races that lived in the chaotic starry sky retreated. The world didn't know his name. They only knew that he was called Spacetime, and the word Spacetime had become his title. No one knew his origin, and no one knew his inheritance. Since this person appeared in the world, countless supreme seeds had been suppressed and killed. In the present world, whether it was a great sect or an ancient palace, all of them were trembling in fear. He trampled on the ancient sect, ascended the path to heaven, exterminated the beast race in the starry sky, and even left his desolate and bleak figure in several chaotic forbidden lands. This was the life of the Spacetime Lord before he achieved the Tao. It was also the era of the third Yuan Hui. No one could compete with him. He created the Spacetime Law, and condensed his own method in Tao. He was opening a Yuan Hui that belonged to him alone. Millions of years later, the Xianhuang sect was still a great sect. But today, dark clouds gathered in the Xianhuang sect. Billions of thunderbolts raged in the sky, as if it was a sign that an old friend was about to arrive in the Xianhuang sect. The former young boy Gowa no longer existed in the world. His current name was Spacetime. He was dressed in black, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His cheeks, which were as sharp as a knife, were blooming with a cold and arrogant expression. His eyes were indifferent as he walked toward the Xianhuang sect step by step, making the Xianhuang sect feel as if they were facing a great enemy. Sigh. Looking at the scene in the picture, Yi Xian sighed. Perhaps he already knew the result. If time could go back, I would only want to be ordinary in the world, and be buried in the yellow earth forever. I would not care about the disturbances in the chaotic universe. The Spacetime Lord stood with his hands behind his back, quietly looking at himself in the picture, as if he was recalling a distant memory. The picture changed, and the illusion continued. Xianhuang sect. Dark clouds pressed down, and the world was silent. Light rain dripped from the sky, and a silent and oppressive atmosphere grew in the entire Xianhuang sect. In the illusion, the space-time lord's footsteps were heavy, and there was no power around him. Only a pair of black eyes were like the chaotic universe. The power of time and space flowed on his body, and his whole body was filled with the aura of vicissitudes of time. Now, he was only one step away from attaining Tao and becoming the strongest of all time in the third Yuan Hui. However, there was a final knot in his heart that he had not resolved in his life. Today he came to the Xianhuang sect to finally settle it. At this time, the space-time lord in the illusion was surrounded by the profound meaning of the Great Path. The law of time had been condensed to the extreme, and the long river of time was surging in the sky, reflecting his unparalleled majesty. I wonder what brings the space-time lord to my Xianhuang sect. On the city wall, the former young master of the Xianhuang sect had now taken over the position of sect master. He was also a peak existence in the entire chaotic world. But now his face was extremely solemn. He looked at the unparalleled figure in front of the city gate, and his eyes were filled with despair and trembling. This was because the person in front of him was only one step away from attaining Tao. Countless peerless figures had been killed by him. In the third Yuan Hui, no one was his match. The cause of the past, the effect of today. I'm here to end the past. The space-time lord said indifferently. Everything was silent, and the world was silent. The entire Xianhuang sect was oppressed and silent. The Xianhuang sect leader clenched his fists. For the first time in his life, he bent his back and bowed to the space-time lord. You are about to attain Tao and take charge of the third Yuan Hui. I wonder if the Xianhuang sect has offended you to make you come in person? Qi. The years surged, and the space-time lord took a step forward. He was already standing on the city wall, 10 feet away from the Xianhuang sect leader. His eyes were calm as he looked at the man. Do you still remember me? The space-time lord asked calmly. The name of the space-time lord has suppressed the past and the present. Your portrait has long been spread throughout the chaos. How can I not recognize you? The Xianhuang sect leader replied bitterly. The space-time lord slowly shook his head. His face was calm as he looked at the entire Xianhuang city. A sad smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You only recognize the space-time lord of the world, but you have forgotten the little beggar of the past. As the space-time lord's words fell, the Xianhuang sect leader's face froze. He seemed to have forgotten something important, but he couldn't remember it. After all, tens of millions of years were too long, and it was enough for people to forget many things. Qi. The sound of the air breaking came, and a middle-aged beautiful woman appeared on the city wall. She quickly walked to the Xianhuang sect leader and looked at the space-time lord with fear in her eyes. Space-time lord, our Xianhuang sect has not offended you. Why do you have to make things difficult for us before you attain Tao? The middle-aged beautiful woman said coldly. Chapter 1289. Looking at the elegant and beautiful woman, the space-time lord's eyes were in a trance. His expression was slightly complicated as he slowly walked toward the couple. Xianxiao, if I die, you will leave the black-yellow sect. The leader of the black-yellow sect roared as he strode toward the space-time lord. I am the leader of the black-yellow sect. If the sect exists, I will live. If the sect is destroyed, I will die. The black-yellow heavenly blade traversed the heavens and the earth. Vast and endless power bloomed in this world. The blade carried the power to annihilate all things as it slashed toward the space-time lord. Freeze! The space-time lord was only one step away from attaining the Tao. In the entire chaotic universe, there were few who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Even though the leader of the black-yellow sect dominated a region, he was still far from being a match for the space-time lord. Heaven and earth froze and time stood still. The space-time lord strolled forward and arrived beside the leader of the black-yellow sect. He didn't use any killing techniques, but with a wave of his hand, the dark clouds in the sky receded, and the originally dim world became bright and sunny. This kind of world-changing technique left the leader of the black-yellow sect speechless. He couldn't even muster up any resistance. Time flies. Old friends reunite after millions of years. I am very relieved. The space-time lord had his back to the two of them. The river of time rumbled and surged above his head. He looked at the vast black yellow city in a daze. Old friends. The middle-aged noblewoman was stunned. She quickly walked to her husband and looked at the space-time lord solemnly. How did we know you? The space-time lord slowly turned to look at the middle-aged noblewoman. Millions of years have passed. Xianxiao, do you still remember the small mountain village where you were born and raised? As the space-time lord's words fell, the middle-aged noblewoman was stunned. After a full 10 breaths, she looked at the space-time lord in front of her with disbelief in her eyes. In the next moment, her face turned pale, and her delicate body trembled to the extreme. You are Goa? The figure that was about to fade away quietly appeared in her heart. She cried out in alarm. Her entire body was numb on the spot, unable to believe what she had experienced. An ill-fated relationship millions of years ago would blossom and bear fruit millions of years later. The youth's honest and naive face was no longer there. But the space-time lord's silhouette still had a trace of his youth. Are you that little beggar? Suddenly, the dark yellow city lord cried out in horror. He couldn't believe that the lord of time and space, who was about to attain the Tao, was actually the ragged beggar who had left the dark yellow sect thousands of years ago. The little beggar from back then is already dead. There is only time and space left in this world. The master of time and space said calmly. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, the middle-aged woman laughed bitterly. As she laughed, 2 streams of tears flowed from her eyes. She stared at the space-time lord in front of her and said sadly, I understand now. I understand everything now. You hate me. You want nothing more than for me to die. You came here today to prove to me that you have become an invincible character in the primal chaos. Doggy, is this your revenge against me? Goa, even if you're about to achieve your Tao, even if I die, I will never regret the decision I made back then. Xianxiao screamed, looking extremely miserable. You're wrong. I don't hate you. A seed was planted millions of years ago, and today, millions of years later, it will finally blossom and bear fruit. If I don't come to end this grudge, I won't be able to take this final step, the space-time lord said calmly. How do you want to end it? Xianxiao smiled sadly. If I die in front of you, will this grudge end? Xianxiao asked sadly. She held the sword in her hand and slashed at her own neck. Clang! The space-time lord frowned slightly and flicked the sword to the ground. Then he calmly shook his head and said, Love is like the moon in the water. Beautiful women are nothing more than beautiful skeletons. Today, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to see you one last time and resolve the last concern in my heart. Time was like a song. After experiencing ups and downs, the space-time lord had learned a lot over the past millions of years. He was no longer the childish youth he once was. He only wanted to resolve the knot in his heart and truly take the final step. Goa. Xianxiao bit her lips. At this moment she felt lost. She had thought that the space-time lord had appeared to take revenge on her. But now, she suddenly realized that there was no longer any affection in his eyes for her. He really was here to resolve the last knot in his heart. He had changed. He was no longer the Goa of the past. Now he was only the space-time lord, a man who was about to become the strongest man in history. She was just a knot in his heart. There was no longer any affection left. Goa, I know I've wronged you. Back then, Xianxiao worshipped him and was willing to marry him. After millions of years, the two of us helped each other. Even in the face of danger, we never left each other. Goa, I've wronged you. It's just that we weren't fated to be together. Xianxiao smiled bitterly and shook her head. The world has changed. Time has changed. I've never had you, so how can I lose you? In the past, I was too stubborn. Today, it's time to wake up from the dream. The space-time lord said softly with a smile. He slowly turned and walked into the distance. He didn't look at the young girl of the past anymore. At this moment, he had truly transcended. His mind was perfect, and he was about to step onto the path of Tao. Die. All of a sudden, a small cauldron streaked across the sky and instantly pierced through the space-time lord's chest. A large amount of blood spurted out. Boom! The space-time law surged. The The space-time lord turned around and pointed at the dark yellow hierarch. Similarly, the cauldron pierced through his chest. A large amount of blood spurted out from the dark yellow hierarch's mouth. Bang! Both of them fell to the ground. Xianxia was completely stunned. The scene in front of her seemed to have turned her into a puppet. She couldn't believe that her husband would sneak attack Goa, and even try to kill him here. My wife. He was hit by the heaven-shattering cauldron. He can't use his cultivation. Quickly kill him. Only then will I have a chance to compete for the position of the strongest in history. The dark yellow hierarch roared at Xianxia with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. No, I can't. Xianxia shook her head with a pale face. My wife, if I don't kill him, how can I achieve Tao? Today is the best opportunity. If he becomes the strongest in history, what will happen to us? Don't you want me to become the strongest in history? The dark yellow hierarch roared with a crazed look in his eyes. My wife, help me kill him. The dark yellow hierarch roared anxiously. At this moment, the space-time lord was bathed in blood. He looked indifferently at the girl from before. No one knew what he was thinking. The sword in Xianxiao's hand trembled. She seemed to have exhausted all her strength as she staggered toward the space-time lord. Looking at the calm face of her childhood playmate, a look of pity flashed across her eyes. You really want to kill me? Looking at Xianxiao slowly raising the sword in her hand, the space-time lord smiled bitterly. It's not that I want to kill you, but if I don't kill you, my husband won't be able to achieve Tao. I'm sorry. Her delicate body trembled and her face was pale. She didn't dare to look at the space-time lord as she choked with sobs. So that's how it is. What he said was true. The space-time lord muttered in disappointment. A drop of clear tears slowly flowed down his cheek. His bleak and desolate words echoed between heaven and earth. Whoosh! The river of time surged like a tide. As the waves of time surged, the mysterious phantom walked out of the river of time. He walked up to the space-time lord and spoke in his ear. You've never had anything, so what's there to lose? You've been lonely all your life. Today, you've come to realize that your Tao lies ahead, not in the past. Severing emotions and abandoning love isn't heartless. It's just to let you understand yourself. Do you understand now? The mysterious phantom said softly. Thank you. The space-time lord nodded slowly. His pierced chest and abdomen quickly healed. He summoned the heaven-shattering void cauldron into his hand, and there were no more wounds on his body. This caused the couple to be completely stunned. Beauty fades quickly, and time is like a song. Bury the past and welcome a new life. The space-time lord's expression was tranquil. He looked at the former girl, as if he was looking at a stranger. There was no longer any fluctuation in his eyes. With a thought, there is love in all rivers and mountains. With a thought, there is no heart left. You were the love of my youth. Today I've severed emotions and abandoned love. From now on, there will be no more puppies in this world, only time and space. Boom! The river of time rumbled and surged. The power of time and space filled the sky and earth. The terrifying waves of time enveloped the entire Xianhuang sect. No! Looking at the scene before him, the Xianhuang sect leader cried out in horror. Unfortunately, in the waves of time, the entire Xianhuang sect turned into ashes. The so-called Xianhuang sect leader also turned into dust. The space-time lord calmly watched his former love turn into bones and dissipate with the wind. From beginning to end, he didn't show the slightest fluctuation. There are many attachments in a person's life. Everyone's attachments are different. You should stick to what you should stick to and give up what you should give up. I think you should understand this at this moment, the mysterious phantom said softly. You have been through my life, but you are not from my era. However, I still have to thank you for your appearance, the space-time lord said with a smile. I am about to achieve the Tao. I think you will also leave. Now, can you tell me what you need me to do for you after I achieve the Tao? The space-time lord said leisurely. The mysterious phantom was silent for more than 10 breaths. The space-time lord was silent, waiting for him to speak. I can't change the future. I can only go back to the past. In the 10th Eon, there will be a person called Yi Xian. I hope you can help me cripple his power of time and space, so that he will never step into the river of time like me. The mysterious phantom sighed sadly and disappeared between heaven and earth. Chapter 1290. In the Chaos Verse, the stars in the sky roared as they rotated. The river of stars that ran through the Chaos Verse was vast and endless. Every now and then, a sea of stars would appear, creating a magnificent scene. The Space-Time Lord stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The stars in the sky flashed past him as he looked calmly at Yi Xian. He appeared very calm. The illusion of time had already disappeared. Yi Xian was completely stunned. However, his soul seemed to be frozen. He was unable to recover from the scene he had just seen. Destroy my powers of time and space? After a dozen breaths of time, Yi Xian said those words with a pause between each word. An indescribable feeling grew in his heart. Why? Why is this happening? Yi Xian did not panic, because he believed that his future self would not harm him. But why did his future self want the Space-Time Lord to destroy his powers of time and space? Never let me step into the river of time? What happened to the future? Why? Why? Answer me. Suddenly, Yi Xian roared madly at the Space-Time Lord. His eyes had already turned red, because he could sense the despair his future self had felt before he disappeared. Right now, only the Space-Time Lord could answer his questions. In the Chaos Verse, the stars in the sky, the Space-Time Lord was untainted by dust. He gazed at the boundless universe and sighed. Because the path ahead is a dead end. It's not just him. Even I cannot walk out of this dead end. Is it that pair of vicious eyes in the river of time? Suddenly, Yi Xian's expression changed. He seemed to think of something. Back then, his future self had been able to face those vicious eyes alone in the river of time. Could it be that the vicious eyes of eternity were the key? You know them? Upon hearing Yi Xian's words, the Space-Time Lord's calm expression suddenly changed. He looked at Yi Xian in shock, his brows tightly knitted together. Is it really them? Yi Xian said in a low voice. Seeing Yi Xian's confused expression, the Space-Time Lord gradually calmed down. He knew that Yi Xian did not know who this pair of ancient, ominous eyes belonged to. It's terrifying, but it's trapped in this path of no return. No matter how hard it tries to break free, it's nothing more than a pawn of the Chaos Verse, the Space-Time Lord said in a low, bitter voice. It doesn't matter if it's you, me, or even that creature in the long river of time. We're all just chess pieces, because there's no path to take at the end of the primal chaos. The Space-Time Master's words were indescribable, and his entire being seemed extremely bleak. Yi Xian, although this is the first time we've met in this life, because of his appearance in the past, we can be considered old friends. I promised him that I would cripple your space-time powers, and today is the day I fulfill my promise. The Space-Time Lord gradually calmed down. He quietly stared at Yi Xian. Although he did not release any of his aura, just his rotating eyes of time alone made Yi Xian feel an extremely terrifying sense of danger. Yi Xian was absolutely certain that the Space-Time Lord really was going to cripple his space-time powers in the next moment. This caused his expression to change, because there was no way he could lose his space-time powers. To him, this was an unparalleled calamity. Perhaps all the answers could only be found in the long river of time. If he lost his space-time powers, his future would truly be doomed. Are you really going to do this? Yi Xian asked coldly. Staring at Yi Xian's cold face, the Space-Time Lord let out a long sigh. You saw it. I already promised him back then. To prevent you from walking down his same path, I can only cripple your space-time powers. But don't worry. As the Space-Time Lord, I can protect you in this chaos verse. Consider this my compensation to you. The Space-Time Lord said with a hint of guilt. Rumble. The eyes of time were spinning, and the chaotic space and time were in chaos. For the Lord of Time and Space to be known as one of the 3 strongest people in the primal chaos universe, his cultivation was simply unparalleled. It was impossible for Yi Xian to resist. Wait! Before the Space-Time Lord could act, Yi Xian spoke up in a grim voice. This caused the Space-Time Lord to feel stifled, and he did not immediately attack Yi Xian. To tell the truth, the Space-Time Lord felt extremely conflicted about Yi Xian. This was because Yi Xian was perhaps the only person who could walk out of the path of chaos. If he truly crippled Yi Xian's space-time powers today, a terrifying change would occur in the future. However, the space-time lord was a man of his word. He had promised that person back then, and today was the day he fulfilled that promise. After all, that person had not walked out of the path of chaos in the past. Why should he allow Yi Xian to repeat that mistake? Let me ask you. You promised him that you would cripple my space-time powers, so that I would never be able to step into the river of time again. Yi Xian said calmly. That's right. The space-time lord slowly nodded. All right. Then please answer me one thing, Yi Xian said. Speak, the space-time lord replied. I am him, and he is me. We've always been the same person, right? Yi Xian said. That's correct. The space-time lord was slightly taken aback, but he still answered truthfully. Since I am him, and he is me, I'll tell you now. You absolutely cannot cripple my space-time powers. This is your promise to me, Yi Xian said solemnly. No, he is the future you, and I promised the future you as well. Thus, I still have to fulfill my promise. The space-time lord was not fooled by Yi Xian's sophistry. He knew very well just how difficult the future would be. In the past, he once told me that I've already changed the future, and that he no longer exists in the future. As long as you give me time, I believe that I can change the future. I definitely won't walk the same path as him, Yi Xian said firmly. As Yi Xian's words fell, the space-time lord fell silent. He looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression, and a hint of hesitation flashed through his eyes. To be honest, Yi Xian was the greatest variable. Perhaps he truly was the only one who could walk out of the path of chaos, and truly comprehend the ultimate secrets of the primordial chaos. Actually, I've never thought about crippling your space-time powers. This is because I've been waiting for you ever since the beginning of the third epoch. And now you finally appeared. The space-time lord sighed, and his eyes of time shone with a strange light. He gazed at the ends of the chaos verse, and a hint of unwillingness and sorrow flashed through his eyes. I'm sorry. I broke my promise. I can't promise you that I'll cripple his space-time powers, because I can't walk out of this path of chaos either. However, in this life he still has a chance. In the future, you have already disappeared. This is my final chance, the space-time lord murmured. Tell me the truth. Yi Xian paused between each word as he stared at the space-time lord. Since the space-time lord had chosen not to cripple his space-time powers, the space-time lord would most likely be able to provide him with answers to many of the mysteries he wanted to know. The truth. Haha. The space-time lord laughed. However, his laughter was filled with sorrow and helplessness. His entire being grew silent. Chapter 1291. Yi Xian didn't rush him, because he believed that the Space-Time King would give him an answer. You want to ask why he walked through the river of time, and what he wanted to change. The Space-Time King finally spoke. The Chaos Verse has 12 periods, and each period is divided into 1,289,300,000 years. Every period gives birth to a supreme expert. I'm sure you already know this. However, there are 3 great rivers in the Chaos Verse: the River of Chaos, the River of Fate, and the River of Time. These 3 rivers are derived from the 3 supreme laws, and they rule over the entire Chaos Verse. The River of Chaos rules over chaos, and he is the embodiment of chaos. The River of Fate rules over fate. The fate of all things is predetermined, and the trajectory of all things on the River of Time is predetermined. The future of the River of Time is a predestined path. Your future was originally an illusion, but because your future was so powerful, even though it was an illusion, it was still able to reverse time and return to the past. This is the variable of the Chaos Verse, the Tao Lord said. Everyone has 3 selves on this timeline: the past, the present, and the future. These 3 timelines are predetermined by the Chaos Verse, fate, and space-time. No one can transcend them. However, your future is so powerful that he broke the fetters of the future and entered the River of Time. This is why he appeared, the Space-Time King explained. You still haven't told me what he changed when he returned to the past. Yi Xian frowned, and went straight to the heart of the matter. He redeemed his past regrets and broke the trajectory of his Chaosverse fate until he stood above the Chaosverse, truly unfettered by anything. The Spacetime King smiled bitterly, but he failed because he was an illusory existence. Even though he was extremely powerful in the future, that didn't happen. Even though he reversed the river of time, there weren't many things that could have changed, because the calamity he would encounter would be unimaginable. That being in the river of time, the punishment of the river of fate, and the suppression of the river of chaos. Everything was an obstacle that prevented him from changing the future. In the future, he still failed in the end. He was like the strongest throughout the ages, unable to walk out of the path of chaos. He didn't want you to tread on his old path, which was why he asked me to cripple your space-time ability, because the future path was too bleak. It could be said that he walked alone throughout the ages. In the end, he could only turn into dust. Yi Xian quietly listened to the space-time master's narration. A heavy look flashed across his eyes. Even his future self had failed. Yi Xian suddenly felt a little lost. Would his future really be so difficult? What is the path of chaos? I've once seen you three utmost powerful beings head to the ends of the primal chaos. However, all of you returned empty-handed, as though you had met with an unparalleled calamity. I'm sure that I'll experience the same thing as you guys in the future. Yi Xian asked the ultimate question. At the mention of the path of chaos, the space-time master's breath caught in his throat. A trace of panic flashed through his eyes, and then a sad smile appeared on his face. The Chaosverse has a total of 12 periods. This is a well-known fact. Lord of Spacetime didn't answer the question. Yi Xian frowned. He didn't know why the Spacetime Master had brought this up. Rumble. The stars in the sky rumbled and rotated. At this moment, the Spacetime Master's aura was extremely chaotic. It was as though he was hesitating whether or not he should continue speaking to Yi Xian. This situation lasted for several dozen breaths of time. Yi Xian calmly waited, because he could faintly sense that what the Spacetime Master was about to say would be the most terrifying secret of the Chaosverse. Phew! The Spacetime Master slowly exhaled, and the panic in his eyes gradually disappeared. He stared straight at Yi Xian and finally said, "Do you think that the utmost powerful beings of all time will die?" Boom! It was like a thunderclap from the highest heavens, like the stars and universe exploding. When the Spacetime Master said these words, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He was completely dazed, as though he had thought of something extremely terrifying. Seeing Yi Xian's shocked expression, the Spacetime Master bitterly said, "It seems that you've thought of it. That's right. The utmost powerful beings of all time will die. And it's not just the utmost powerful beings of all time. Every living being in the 12 periods of the Chaosverse will die." Why? Although Yi Xian could faintly guess the answer, he still couldn't help but ask. The Chaosverse has 12 periods. Each period is divided into 1,289,300,000 years. That's a total of 12 periods. However, when all 12 periods are over, what will the Chaosverse experience? The Spacetime Master smiled bitterly. Annihilation. Complete annihilation. The Spacetime Master bitterly smiled. When the 12 periods are over, the Chaosverse will experience the Great Chaos Annihilation. Not only will the utmost powerful beings of all time die, but all the living beings of the Chaosverse will cease to exist. Boom! When the Spacetime Master finished speaking, Yi Xian's soul trembled. He stumbled back several steps, his entire body trembling with fear. Death. This was a simple word that was insignificant to the living beings of the Chaosverse. This was because any cultivator could live forever. As long as nothing unexpected happened, they could live on without worrying about their lifespan. But now this secret had come from the Spacetime Master. This word was simply terrifying. No one wanted to die. Even the utmost powerful beings of all time were no exception. But when death truly did descend, no one could remain calm. Everyone feared death. This was the natural instinct of all living beings. There had never been an exception. Can it be that after the 12 periods, the Chaosverse will truly experience annihilation? That not even the utmost powerful beings of all time will be able to avoid it? Yi Xian trembled as he spoke. Primordial samsara, the rebirth of all things. This is the principle of the primordial chaos. From annihilation to rebirth, the chaos verse will be born anew, and a new cycle will begin anew. The 12 periods are endless. This is the Tao of samsara of the chaos verse. Whether it's the Lord of primordial chaos, your future self, or even the Master of Destiny and I, none of us can avoid this outcome. After the 12 periods, when the chaos verse is annihilated and reincarnated, no one will be able to survive. Upon hearing the space-time master's words, Yi Xian felt as though he had been smashed by the universe. His mind was muddled, and he was completely unable to calm himself down. But no one is willing to accept this. Whether it's me, primordial chaos, destiny, or even the other utmost powerful beings of all time, including you in the future, no one wants to just sit and wait for death. Everyone wants to walk out of this path of chaos, to truly transcend the primordial chaos, to not be dominated by the Tao of samsara. Unfortunately, we all failed. I, primordial chaos, and destiny all went to the ends of the primordial chaos, hoping to break out of this path of chaos. Unfortunately, we all failed miserably, and the other utmost powerful beings of all time were no match for the three of us. The space-time master smiled sadly. Chapter 1292. Then what about my future? When Yi Xian asked this question, he suddenly came to his senses, and a sad expression appeared on his face. He really was stupid. If his future self could break through the path of despair, then he wouldn't have needed to reverse time to change the future. However, although we've all failed, none of us have given up. We're all searching for a way to break through the path of chaos, a way to break free from the cycle of chaos. When the chaos verse reaches the end of the 12 periods, no one will be willing to wait for death, who will be able to break through the path of chaos and transcend the cycle of chaos. This is also an unknown mystery. However, I know very well that if you want to transcend the cycle of chaos and break through the path of eternity, even if you gather 120,000 experts, you won't be able to do it. That place is too mysterious, and no one can break open that door. The space-time lord smiled sadly. That door? Yi Xian was stunned. We call it the Gate of Reincarnation. It's located at the end of the chaos verse, and only the strongest can reach it. If you can open the Gate of Reincarnation, you might be able to break free from the cycle of chaos and truly stand above the chaos. The space-time lord whispered. What's behind the door? Who built the Gate of Reincarnation? Yi Xian murmured. I don't know, I really don't know. The space-time lord seemed to be lost in his memories, and a look of reverence appeared on his face. He murmured. The Gate of Reincarnation has always existed in the chaos verse. Who built the Gate of Reincarnation? What's behind the Gate of Reincarnation? No one knows the answer. However, there's a legend from the first period. If someone can gather all 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons, they can open the Gate of Reincarnation and truly transcend the cycle of chaos and see what's behind the Gate of Reincarnation. The space-time lord sighed. Small cauldrons? Yi Xian was stunned, and a strange look flashed through his eyes. Whether it's chaos, destiny, or even the undying and human Tao, they all believe in this legend and are even searching for the heaven-shattering cauldrons. It's just that I don't think so, because I believe that whether it's the Gate of Reincarnation or the heaven-shattering void cauldron, they're all external objects, and people are the most fundamental things. If these things were created by an unimaginable person, then we'd be nothing more than toys in the palm of his hand. Perhaps it's not just us, the primordial sovereigns. Perhaps the entire chaos verse is under his control. The space-time lord laughed bitterly. Yi Xian was also shocked by the space-time master's bold guess. Actually, I've always believed that you can change the future. You can even break through the path of chaos and push open the Gate of Reincarnation. You can truly see what exists behind the Gate of Reincarnation, the master of space-time said solemnly. Yi Xian was stunned when he heard the space-time master's words. He hadn't expected the space-time master to have such high expectations of him. I've been waiting for you ever since I achieved my Tao in the third era. It's not just because you help me in the future. The real reason is because of you as a person, the space-time master said solemnly. Me? Yi Xian was stunned and confused. He was just an extremely ordinary person. He didn't even have a battle constitution. Why did the space-time master value him so highly? I only have a mortal body. I don't have any battle constitution. They all say that a mortal body can only be cultivated to the 3rd level of creation. That's already my limit, Yi Xian said, perplexed. A mortal body? The space-time master stared at Yi Xian, then slowly nodded and shook his head. An extremely complicated look appeared in his eyes. You are indeed a mortal body. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's one thing you don't know. What is it? Yi Xian asked in amazement. Whether it's a mortal body, a primordial sovereign, or even a primordial sovereign, the trajectory of every living being is recorded in the 3 great rivers. However, you're different. You're not part of the 3 great rivers' trajectory at all. You're the only anomaly in the chaos verse. That's the strangest thing, the space-time master said solemnly. Every living being is predestined. Even the primordial chaos destiny and I are included. Every living being's trajectory has been arranged by the chaos verse. However, you're not part of it. That's the most suspicious thing. A living being that isn't controlled by the chaos verse has appeared. That's simply impossible. Yet it's happening to you. Who are you? Are you really just a mortal body? Perhaps your talent is truly that of a mortal body. However, the trajectory of your life isn't controlled by the primordial chaos. That alone can lead to endless possibilities. That's why I believe you can break through the path of chaos and open the gate of reincarnation. The space-time master's voice was powerful and resonant. He was extremely confident in his own judgment. In truth, ever since the space-time master had attained his Tao, he had been constantly deducing the trajectory of Yi Xian's life. When he discovered that Yi Xian's life wasn't controlled by the primordial chaos, he believed that Yi Xian was no ordinary person. But what secrets did Yi Xian possess? The space-time master truly couldn't see through them. And it wasn't just him. The primordial chaos destiny was the same. The primordial chaos is reborn. All living things enter the cycle of reincarnation. The chaos universe has 3 great rivers. Before the chaos verse was born, the 3 great rivers existed. That's why the new chaos verse was born. I once speculated that the 3 great rivers had always existed in our previous chaos verse. When the previous chaos verse experienced the cycle of samsara, the 3 great rivers reappeared in our current chaos verse. The space-time master spoke a great deal. Yi Xian listened in shock the entire time. Today's conversation with the space-time master was so shocking that he couldn't immediately digest it. Actually, what secrets you possess isn't important. What's important is that you have a chance to open the gate of reincarnation. I've placed all my hopes on you. That's why I've been waiting for you, the space-time master said softly. But there's still something I'm puzzled about. What kind of creature is the ominous primordial eye in the river of time? Why is it that even my future fears it? As the space-time master, you should be able to control the river of time. You should know what kind of existence the ominous primordial eye is, right? Yi Xian asked the last question in his heart. This was the answer he'd always wanted to know. When the ominous primordial eye was mentioned, the space-time master's breath hitched. It was as if he had thought of something terrifying. He didn't immediately answer Yi Xian's question. I've never controlled the river of time, and no one has. After I attained my Tao, this creature has always existed in the river of time. What kind of existence is it? Although I have an answer in my heart, I cannot tell you, because it will bring you danger. You must remember that you absolutely cannot draw this creature out. Otherwise, a great calamity will befall you, the space-time master said solemnly. Chapter 1293. Seeing the space-time lord's serious and fearful expression, Yi Xian knew that the ominous eyes of eternity definitely had a terrifying origin. Since the space-time lord hadn't told him about this, he most likely had his own plans. Yi Xian was someone who knew when to advance and when to retreat. Since the space-time lord didn't want to talk about it, he wouldn't pursue the matter. However, Yi Xian grew more and more curious about the ominous eyes of eternity. If the Space-Time Lord's future self and the Space-Time Lord were fearful of an existence, it meant that the ominous eyes of eternity were existences at the very least. It wasn't something he could touch at the moment. Moreover, the Space-Time Lord had told him far too many secrets today. This already made Yi Xian very grateful to the Space-Time Lord. He now had his own plans for the future. He was no longer as lost and uncertain as he was in the past. The end of the primordial chaos, the land of reincarnation. Yi Xian muttered solemnly, a look of unswerving determination flashing through his eyes. His future self had failed, but in this life, he had just stepped onto this path. The path was right beneath his feet, and it was up to him to decide how to proceed. Your current cultivation is far too weak. The outside world already knows of your existence, and you've already attracted the attention of the other sovereigns. For this period of time, cultivate by my side. You can leave only when you reach the yin-yang realm. You must remember that although you will be very powerful in the future and have formed a good relationship with me, you are still far too weak in this life. You are still no match for those sovereigns. Although you are an anomaly in the chaotic universe, and your path of life is not controlled by the primordial chaos, you are far too weak right now. There are far too many people who can kill you. Once you die, everything comes to an end. Your path is very difficult. I can only help you in a moderate way, but you will still have to rely on yourself. If I continue to protect you, that would truly be harming you. In the end, you will never be able to grow, the Space-Time Lord said calmly. Many thanks. Yi Xian clasped his hands and bowed, expressing his gratitude to the Space-Time Master. He was truly grateful to the Space-Time Master. Not only had the Space-Time Master told him many secrets, but he had also allowed him to cultivate by his side. To Yi Xian, one of the 3 most powerful experts in the entire Chaos-verse, this was an incredible opportunity for him, a favor that was as great as the heavens themselves. I hope that you can remember this. If you really do encounter a life-or-death crisis in the future, I will not save you. If you cannot even overcome your own crisis, then that will prove that I truly misjudged you, the Space-Time Master said solemnly. A flower in a greenhouse could not withstand any wind and rain. Only a seed that had experienced the baptism of wind and rain could grow into a big tree. The Space-Time Master understood this principle, and so did Yi Xian. I still have a question that I would like to ask you. Yi Xian had always been worried about something. This was a problem that had been bothering him for a long time. Before he started cultivating with the Space-Time Master, he naturally had to clarify this matter. There is no harm in asking, the Space-Time Master said softly. My existence has already attracted the attention of the various supreme experts. They have all sent out disciples to search for me. If these supreme experts of the past personally act in the future, I will not be able to resist at all, Yi Xian said solemnly. I see. The Space-Time Master smiled. You can rest assured that these supreme experts of the past will not act against you. If they do, they will definitely suffer a great chaos tribulation and be suppressed by the Chaos-verse themselves. Upon hearing the Space-Time Master's words, Yi Xian was stunned. He did not understand the meaning behind the Space-Time Master's words. In the Chaos-verse, the natural laws are everywhere. Although the supreme experts of the past are invincible for a Yuan Hui, they cannot act recklessly. There are also some natural laws that cannot be touched. Every Yuan Hui will give birth to a supreme expert of the past. The supreme expert of the past stands out among the supreme seeds and sweeps through all the great enemies along the way. Only then can they ascend to the position of the supreme expert of the past. Therefore, the supreme experts of the past cannot act against the supreme seeds. Moreover, you have attracted 12 tribulations of creation. This means that you have already been recognized by the chaos laws as in supreme seed. Therefore, your worries do not exist at all, the Space-Time Master explained. I see. Yi Xian was enlightened and instantly understood everything. Just as the Space-Time Master said, if the supreme experts of the past could act against the supreme seeds at will, how could the next supreme expert of the next Yuan Hui be born? For example, if the Space-Time Master had not achieved his Tao back then, If the chaos and destiny had killed him, how could there be a space-time master of the third Yuan Hui? This also indirectly proved why the supreme orthodoxies were nurturing the supreme seeds, and why the supreme experts of the past could not interfere in the battle between the supreme experts. It was because this would violate the chaos laws and be suppressed by the chaos verse. When Yi Xian understood this secret, the huge stone that had been pressing on his heart was finally lifted. Yi Xian could also finally breathe a sigh of relief. He did not have to worry about the supreme experts attacking. However, Yi Xian did not let his guard down. Although the supreme experts of the past would not act against him, these supreme orthodoxies were extremely terrifying. Among them, the supreme experts could easily take his life. Therefore, he had to become stronger as soon as possible. This was the most important matter at hand. What happened next was very simple. Yi Xian began to cultivate with the space-time master until he stepped into the yin-yang boundary. Only then would he leave the space-time master's side. In the chaos verse, the stars rotated. Starry rivers were surging in the vast starry river. Dazzling starlight covered the entire sky. Terrifying roars of beasts could be heard. Countless giant beasts of the starry sky were roaring and roaring in the starry sea. They were crazily chasing a fleeing figure. Roar! The sea of stars trembled, and the great stars exploded. Each of these cosmic beasts was extremely terrifying. There were tens of thousands of them, and each of them had a cultivation base of the creation realm. The terrifying waves of energy they created could be said to be destructive. Time Blade. Yi Xian's hair was disheveled, and his body was mottled with blood. He was madly fleeing in the boundless sea of stars. He looked extremely miserable. With a wave of his hand, he condensed a space-time technique, and a time heavenly blade appeared. The terrifying time blade radiance exuded a terrifying power that could annihilate all things. When the blade slashed out, dozens of giant beasts of the starry sky were reduced to ashes. The power of time was too terrifying. In the hands of Yi Xian, it displayed a monstrous power. However, when Yi Xian used this technique, he was extremely weak. After all, there were tens of thousands of cosmic beasts chasing after him. He had used up 30% of his cultivation base to kill dozens of cosmic beasts. Bang! A beast claw shattered the starry sky and directly smashed onto Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's entire body was blasted flying, and a huge star was shattered by his body. A mouthful of blood sprayed out from his mouth. I once told you that the so-called space-time represents time and space. Only when the two are perfected can the power of space-time be truly displayed. Moreover, you clearly used 100% of your power, but you only used less than 40% of it. If you continue to flee like this, you will exhaust your cultivation base and die before these cosmic beasts can tear you apart. The space-time master strolled through the starry sky. He looked down at Yi Xian indifferently, his voice cold and clear. Chapter 1294. Gritting his teeth and bleeding, Yi Xian fled through the stars with a grim expression on his face. Tens of thousands of astral beasts roared as they chased after Yi Xian. According to the space-time lord, if one wanted to unleash the full power of space-time, one had to temper oneself between life and death. Only then could one comprehend the mysteries of space-time. He'd already taught Yi Xian how to use it. As for how long Yi Xian would take to comprehend it, that would depend entirely on Yi Xian's talent. Kill. Yi Xian fought as he retreated. Every time he unleashed a temporal art, he gained a new understanding of space-time. Above the stars, the space-time lord looked down at Yi Xian, a strange look flashing through his eyes. This old friend of mine is truly strange. He clearly has a mortal body, but his comprehension of space-time is no slower than my own, he murmured. What kind of secret does he have that no one knows about? The space-time lord frowned. He truly couldn't see through Yi Xian. He clearly looked ordinary, but his cultivation speed was no slower than his own. Mortal body. Laughable. Utterly laughable. In the space-time lord's eyes, this was a complete fallacy. Yi Xian's comprehension ability was no worse than his own. After all, the space-time battle body was extremely rare. Although Yi Xian had a mortal body, he was on par with him. Chaos spirit body? No. The space-time lord silently denied his own judgment. Hidden spirit body? No. If he had a hidden spirit body, I would have been able to see through him with a single glance. The space-time lord frowned. He'd been thinking about Yi Xian this entire time, and he'd even divined Yi Xian's past and present. However, he couldn't see any problems with this person. The space-time lord was an extremely intelligent person. In his opinion, Yi Xian didn't seem to have any problems, but this was precisely the biggest problem. Where did he come from? Why isn't he controlled by the chaos verse? The space-time lord shook his head helplessly. He really couldn't figure out the answer. Time flew by, and 100,000 years passed in a blink of an eye. 100,000 years was a long time, but it was not worth mentioning for cultivators. It was only a short period of time in their long lives. Over the past 100,000 years, Yi Xian had not only been cultivating the power of space-time, he had also been consolidating his techniques, causing him to undergo a shocking transformation. Time. Within the chaotic universe, Yi Xian stretched out his 5 fingers, and the power of time and space covered the heavens and the earth. Tens of thousands of space beasts were turned into ashes, and his supreme might that swept through the starry sky was vividly displayed. All right. The space-time master strolled through space, a gentle smile on his face. When he looked at Yi Xian, there was a hint of approval in his eyes. In just 100,000 years, you've been able to use the power of space-time as you please. You've done well, the space-time lord praised. It's all thanks to Heavenly Master's nurturing. Yi Xian bowed, appearing very humble. He didn't treat the space-time lord as an equal, because he was his future self. He didn't have that right yet. People could have pride, but they couldn't be arrogant. Yi Xian understood this principle very well. He was still very weak right now. Although the space-time lord was helping him, the space-time lord's cultivation base and status weren't things that the current Yi Xian could hope to reach. He had to show due respect. This was the way Yi Xian conducted himself. Although you can use the power of space-time as you please, you have a huge problem. Do you know that? The space-time lord said softly. Please enlighten me, Heavenly Lord. Yi Xian's spirits were roused and he bowed again. In the past 100,000 years, under the guidance of the space-time lord, not only could he use the power of space-time freely, but the space-time lord could also help him answer many questions about cultivation. It could be said that Yi Xian had benefited a lot. Looking at Yi Xian's humble attitude, a gratified look flashed across the space-time lord's eyes. The attitude of not being ashamed to ask for advice was very precious. This also proved that Yi Xian was indeed a promising talent. You cultivate a lot of techniques, but unfortunately they are mixed and not pure. I want to ask you, among all the techniques you know, which one do you think is the most exquisite? The space-time lord asked. Which one is the most exquisite? Yi Xian was slightly startled, and he gradually fell silent. He first cultivated the immortal scripture, then the power of space-time. He was also proficient in devouring techniques like the tribulation transcender technique. As for all kinds of divine abilities, there were also many. The secret techniques of the immortal scripture, the space-time techniques that the space-time lord had taught him over the past 100,000 years. And he also had the tribulation transcender transformation and tribulation transcender devour. He even knew a little about the methods of chaos star masters, and some of the profound meanings of the boundless secular technique, and the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture. Yi Xian could be said to have gathered the strengths of 100 schools of thought. However, if one were to say that he was most proficient in a technique, he really didn't know which one it was. Whether it was the immortal scripture, the space-time technique, or many other techniques, he had dabbled in all of them. However, even Yi Xian couldn't take out the ones that could be said to be the most exquisite. Looking at Yi Xian with a frown, the space-time lord said, "We are the strongest throughout history. We only cultivate one technique our entire lives, and then we create our own technique in Tao. When we cultivate it to the peak, we can sweep through the chaotic universe. I see that you have already comprehended a technique that is suitable for you. But this technique is only a prototype. You still need to constantly perfect it into a technique that is suitable for you to cultivate. Only by transferring and mastering it can you quickly become stronger until you catch up to me. The Space-Time Lord said earnestly. Heavenly Lord, please guide me. Yi Xian humbly asked for guidance. He believed that the Space-Time Lord wouldn't say this for no reason, so he was obviously pointing him in the right direction. In the past 100,000 years, I had you suppress your cultivation and not let you step into the third stage of the creation realm, because you have cultivated too many techniques. Your foundation is already unstable, but you don't know that if you rashly enter the third stage of the creation realm, it will do you more harm than good. That's why you have to lay a good foundation in the creation realm. You have to integrate all the techniques you've learned into your own understanding and integrate them into the techniques you've created. Only by laying the most solid foundation can you pass the yin-yang divine tribulation when you step into the yin-yang realm. The Master of Time and Space said earnestly. Originally, according to my plan, you should focus on one technique. Only in this way can your cultivation speed be qualitatively improved. It's just that you have already learned all kinds of techniques, and these forces have already taken root in your body, so your cultivation speed is very slow. You also need a huge amount of resources to fill these techniques. Although your Tribulation Transcender technique makes up for this shortcoming, cultivating too fast will make your foundation unstable, and you won't be proficient in your own techniques. Of course, this seems to be a shortcoming, but it will also be of great benefit to you. If you can let these techniques advance together, as your cultivation increases, your combat strength will also become extremely terrifying, far surpassing people in the same realm. When you are about to step into the strongest of all time, you will be able to integrate all these techniques into one, and truly integrate them with the techniques you create. At that time, you will become the strongest of all time, perhaps even stronger than many of the strongest of all time. However, you have to understand one thing. You cultivate many techniques at the same time, and the time you take to do so is 10 times or even 100 times that of others. Although the Tribulation Transcender technique makes up for this shortcoming, you still have to comprehend these techniques on your own. The Space-Time Lord said a lot, pointing out the problems in Yi Xian's body. This also made Yi Xian nod slowly, already understanding how he should cultivate. Thank you for your guidance, Heavenly Lord. Yi Xian bowed. Chapter 1295. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. 1,000,000 years passed by in a hurry. On a withered star, Yi Xian's 3,000 black strands of hair hung down behind his head. He sat cross-legged on the withered star, and the heaven-bearing art was circulating leisurely. A gray light covered the entire star. Rumble! The withered star shook violently, and the entire star gradually cracked under Yi Xian's body. The terrifying fluctuations caused by this were simply terrifying to the extreme. Buzz! The space-time divine tree rose from Yi Xian's head. Its thick trunk towered into the sky, and it was actually more than 10 feet taller than it was 1,000,000 years ago. Its branches grew tender green trees that swayed in the starry sky. Wisps of space-time power rippled out, causing the cracked star to quickly heal. Chi! The power of nirvanic extermination soared into the sky, turning into a black heavenly blade that lay above Yi Xian's head. The blade seemed to want to cut through the starry sky, and the mighty power of nirvanic extermination caused one's soul to tremble to the extreme. Flash! Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. As soon as he spoke, he let out an explosive shout. 1,000,000-meter-long saber light slashed out, and the large stars that were rotating in the starry sky turned into ashes. The terrifying Nirvana saber light was simply terrifying to the extreme. Calamity Immortal Technique. Roar! Yi Xian was like a heaven-swallowing Taotai. He opened his mouth wide, and it seemed as if he could swallow the chaotic star sea. The terrifying black fog filled the sky, and the billowing sea of spiritual energy rushed towards him, and he swallowed it all into his stomach. Yi Xian was evolving his various techniques. He had cultivated these techniques for 1,000,000 years, and they had all been upgraded to an extremely terrifying level. Not only these complicated techniques, but there were also all kinds of secret techniques. Yi Xian had painstakingly cultivated for 1,000,000 years, and under the guidance of the space-time master, Yi Xian's foundation was extremely solid. Heaven-bearing art. Rumble. Yi Xian roared towards the sky. The sky-bearing art was operating in a frenzy. The gray light covered the sky as all kinds of techniques were integrated into Yi Xian's body. An indescribable aura blossomed from his body, causing the souls of those who looked at him to slightly tremble. What a great heaven burial art! Suddenly, the space-time lord silently appeared. He stared deeply at Yi Xian, as a sliver of surprise flashed through his eyes. Although Yi Xian had only created the heavens burying technique in the beginning, the first two levels had gradually been perfected over the past million years. Even the space-time lord was stunned by the aura that was being released. Could it be that this aura will give birth to the 11th supreme power in the future? The space-time lord murmured. Something's wrong. Suddenly, the space-time lord rejected his deduction. This was because the presence Yi Xian gave off did not contain the laws of chaos. Instead, it contained a power that made even the space-time lord shudder. As expected, there's something strange about him. The space-time lord muttered solemnly. He thought that Yi Xian could become a supreme power in the next eon, but now it seemed that his deduction was wrong. This was because the birth of every supreme power, no matter what technique they created, would give birth to the laws of chaos. The aura of Yi Xian's heavens burying art was obscure, and it did not contain the laws of chaos at all. This was the biggest problem. But if he can't become a supreme power in the 11th eon, when will he achieve Tao? Or can he ignore the laws of chaos and achieve Tao in the 10th eon? The space-time lord muttered in shock, somewhat unable to believe his deduction. It was common knowledge that the chaotic universe had 12 eon, and each eon could only give birth to one supreme power and one chaos star master. There was no need to talk about chaos star masters, just the supreme power. If one wanted to become a supreme power, they would need to create their own technique in Tao, and then integrate the chaos great Tao to become a supreme power and enter a supreme realm. In the laws of chaos, only one eon could be born in each eon. This was the iron law of chaos, and no one could break it. Break. Suddenly, just as the Lord of Time and Space was deep in thought, an explosive shout came from Yi Xian's mouth once again. He'd finally ascended to the extreme today, a million years later, and his cultivation that had been suppressed for a long time exploded out. His entire body had also successfully stepped into the third stage of creation. Creation is complete, and all techniques are perfect. You only took a million years earlier than I expected. The space-time lord dispelled the doubts in his heart and nodded approvingly at Yi Xian. Without the Heaven Lord's guidance, I would never have reached the complete level of creation so quickly, Yi Xian said humbly. I only gave you some guidance. In fact, you relied on yourself. You do indeed have an astonishing talent, and this is why you could reach the complete level of creation so quickly, the space-time lord said in a low voice. Now that I've stepped into the third level of creation, I'm familiar with many techniques, and I've gradually perfected the 2 levels of heaven's burying art. I wonder when I can step into the yin-yang realm. Yi Xian asked the question he was most concerned about. The yin-yang realm. The space-time lord frowned slightly, and a hint of hesitation appeared in his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian. In fact, there was something he had never told Yi Xian, because even he did not have much confidence in this matter. Looking at the space-time lord's frown, Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat, and he thought of the legend that a mortal body could only cultivate to the 3rd level of creation. Could it be that a mortal body can only stay at the 3rd level of creation? Yi Xian asked solemnly. Follow the flow of creation and turn into yin-yang. The yin-yang realm is a watershed. According to the laws of chaos, a mortal body cannot communicate with the chaos, so it cannot step into the yin-yang realm. This is also the iron law of the laws of chaos, the space-time lord said in a low voice. However, you can rest assured that as the space-time lord, I can attract the yin-yang divine tribulation for you, and help you step into the yin-yang realm, breaking the restriction of this mortal body that cannot step into the yin-yang realm. The space-time lord paused slightly at this point, and then continued. However, you have just entered the 3rd level of creation. Although you have completed the creation realm, You still have to stabilize your realm. I have a flowing time divine pill here that I personally refined in the past, and it's enough to allow your cultivation to reach the peak of the third level of creation. Refine this pill first to raise your cultivation, and once your realm has stabilized, I will attract the yin-yang divine tribulation for you. As the space-time lord spoke, he threw a pill that emitted divine light at Yi Xian, and his entire person quietly disappeared. Yi Xian held the flowing time divine pill with a frown. Although the space-time lord had said it very casually, Yi Xian could completely sense that the space-time lord would attract the yin-yang divine tribulation for him. And it was definitely not that simple. Otherwise, a solemn expression would not have flashed across the space-time lord's face just now. However, since the space-time lord did not say anything, Yi Xian could not pursue the matter. He could only take the flowing time divine pill first to reach the peak of the third level of creation as soon as possible and stabilize his realm. Then, he would prepare for the space-time lord to attract the yin-yang divine tribulation for him. Chapter 1296. Time passed quickly, and time passed quickly. Another 100,000 years had passed, and Yi Xian had already been by the side of the Lord of Time and Space for more than 1,000,000 years. After laying a solid foundation, Yi Xian's cultivation finally reached a critical point. He was only one step away from entering the yin-yang realm. The yin-yang realm was a watershed. Once one entered the yin-yang realm, there would be a qualitative change. Even in the entire chaotic world, the yin-yang realm was a superior existence. In the vast starry sky and the boundless universe, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the starry sky. He released his terrifying qi to the extreme. He wanted to attract the yin-yang tribulation and step into the extreme yin realm. Unfortunately, no matter how Yi Xian released his qi, there was no change in the starry sky universe. There was no trace of the yin-yang tribulation. Sure enough, a long sigh came from the starry sky. The master of time and space appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked up at the starry sky universe and frowned slightly. Yi Xian's face was gloomy. He was speechless. He was at the peak of the creation realm, but he could not step into the extreme yin realm. Although Yi Xian had already expected this outcome, he was still extremely disappointed when he truly experienced it. Yin-yang tribulation, heaven and earth tribulation. Rumble. The master of time and space finally made his move. When he, the strongest of all time, made his move, Yi Xian really saw how terrifying the master of time and space was. The starry sky universe was extremely distorted. The aura of time drowned the starry sky. Whether it was the surging sea of stars or the rotating stars, they were all stagnant at this moment. Only the master of time and space was shining with boundless light. Crack! Chaotic thunder and the starry sky exploded. Endless black clouds gathered above Yi Xian's head. The ink-black clouds rumbled and churned, and black and white tribulation thunder raged in the starry sky. Yin-yang tribulation? Yi Xian trembled and growled. He could faintly feel that the cultivation in his body was rioting. It had an inexplicable connection with the tribulation cloud above his head. Be careful. The master of time and space frowned. He withdrew from the area covered by the tribulation clouds and watched the tribulation clouds form from the other side of the starry sky. However, his brows were still furrowed and did not relax. It was as if he was worried about something. Crack! The tribulation cloud had finished brewing, and the white tribulation lightning struck down at Yi Xian. Wherever the tribulation lightning passed, it turned into ashes. The terrifying power contained within it was simply terrifying. Boom! The first bolt of tribulation lightning had already landed on Yi Xian's body. However, this extremely terrifying tribulation lightning did not cause any harm to him. This was because Yi Xian's foundation was too solid. In the face of this kind of ordinary yin-yang divine tribulation, he only felt like he was scratching an itch. This is the tribulation of yin lightning? Yi Xian whispered in astonishment. He naturally knew about the yin-yang divine tribulation. The yin-yang divine tribulation was divided into two types of tribulation lightning. One was yin lightning, and the other was yang lightning. As long as one passed through these two types of tribulation lightning, one could become an existence in the extreme Yin realm. However, the Yin lightning tribulation, which was as terrifying as a tiger, was nothing to Yi Xian. It did not pose any threat to him at all. This made Yi Xian extremely shocked. At this moment, the master of time and space frowned even more. There was a faint trace of worry in his eyes. He looked at the tribulation cloud with a serious expression. Crack! The yang lightning throbbed and the tribulation cloud roiled. The second bolt of yang lightning struck down at Yi Xian. This bolt of yang lightning was even more terrifying. But when it struck Yi Xian, it still did not pose any threat to him. Woo woo woo. A moment later, the tribulation cloud above Yi Xian's head slowly dissipated, and the starry universe gradually grew clear. However, Yi Xian's expression was extremely gloomy. This was because he was still in the creation realm, and showed no signs of stepping into the yin-yang realm, or the extreme yin realm. Thump, thump, thump. Suddenly, as if the morning bell and evening drum were being struck, as if the laws of primal chaos were being frozen, this part of the starry universe reverberated with the sound of an ancient bell, as a golden tribulation cloud gradually gathered. It really has appeared, the master of time and space said gravely. His eyes of time stared fixedly at the golden tribulation cloud, an extremely grave expression flashing through them. For the master of time and space to show such a worried expression, this was proof of the terrifying origins of this golden tribulation cloud. Yi Xian, this is the legendary yin-yang tribulation. A total of 2 types of tribulation will descend upon you, and both are formed from the laws of primal chaos, the master of time said solemnly. He took a step forward and stood in front of Yi Xian. The power of time rumbled as a supreme aura spread out, instantly enveloping Yi Xian. Heaven master you? Although Yi Xian didn't know what the yin-yang tribulation was, the master of time and space's grave attitude made Yi Xian feel that this yin-yang tribulation was probably extremely terrifying. You can't stop it. No one can stop the yin-yang tribulation. Even the chaos of the first Yuanhui couldn't stop it. The yin-yang tribulation is formed from the laws of primal chaos. This is a path of death, the master of time said solemnly. A towering space-time tree appeared. It was tens of millions of times larger than Yi Xian's space-time tree. At this moment, it completely sheltered Yi Xian under its shade. Heaven master, what are you doing? Yi Xian was startled by the master of time and space's methods. If I don't act, you will die under the yin-yang tribulation. Right now, only I can save your life. I will disperse the yin-yang tribulation. Only in this way can I protect you, the master of time and space said gravely. Disperse the yin-yang tribulation? Yi Xian muttered in shock. As if thinking of something, he suddenly looked at the master of time and space and said, if that's the case, will I never be able to step into the yin-yang realm? Faced with Yi Xian's question, the master of time and space remained silent. However, this was enough to explain everything. Clearly, the master of time and space would disperse the yin-yang tribulation. However, in this way, Yi Xian would completely lose the opportunity to step into the yin-yang realm. The yin-yang tribulation is not child's play. This is a legendary path of death. The laws of primal chaos born from these 2 great tribulations can't be stopped even if you are in the immortal realm, let alone the current you, the master of time and space said coldly. Rumble. As soon as the master of time and space finished speaking, the golden tribulation clouds above their heads roiled. A terrifying silver tribulation thunder was being formed. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying thing happened. Crack! The silver tribulation thunder hadn't finished forming, but the aura it released spread out into the starry universe in all directions. The terrifying laws of primal chaos permeated the air. Whether it was the great rotating stars or the sea of stars, everything turned into bubbles and ceased to exist. This destructive wave spread out for hundreds of millions of miles. In this vast expanse of starry sky, there was nothing left. Only the master of time and space remained standing in the starry sky. Hiss! When he saw this terrifying scene, even though Yi Xian was extremely calm, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His heart palpitated with fear. Yi Xian knew that he couldn't resist the spread of this terrifying wave. If it weren't for the Master of Time and Space's protection, he would have been reduced to ashes. Chapter 1297. Kacha. The silver tribulation finally finished brewing. The tribulation illuminated the starry sky and universe as it slashed down towards Yi Xian. The world-destroying might annihilated the entire starry sky. Other than the strongest of all time, no one would be able to withstand this world-destroying strike. Time. The space-time master's expression didn't change. He stretched out his 5 fingers, and the space-time tree shook. The power of time that could sweep through the entire universe howled out. Boom! The strongest attacked, and the chaos changed color. Although the yin-yang tribulation was terrifying, the space-time master was even more terrifying. He destroyed the silver tribulation with a single strike. However, the starry sky where the Lord of Time and Space and Yi Xian were located had already turned into a terrifying black hole. Everything was annihilated. If Yi Xian didn't have the protection of the Lord of Time and Space, he would have died a long time ago. Rumble. The golden tribulation clouds rolled again, and a golden tribulation thunder began to brew. The fluctuations it displayed were 10 times more terrifying than the first tribulation. A dead end, a dead end. There was no chance of survival. At this moment, Yi Xian finally believed the space-time master's words. If he really went to face the yin-yang tribulation, he would have been reduced to ashes long ago. Kacha. The golden tribulation thunder finally finished brewing, and it struck down with the power to annihilate all things. However, the space-time master was even more terrifying. When he waved his sleeves, it was as if the entire universe was shaking. The power of time directly cancelled out the golden tribulation thunder. Silence. Silence. Deathly silence. When the yin-yang tribulation ended, the universe was in ruins. Terrifying cracks could be seen from time to time. The yin-yang tribulation above Yi Xian's head was gradually dispersing. It was obvious that it would recede soon. Huff! The space-time master exhaled slowly. Fortunately, he had the foresight to guess that the yin-yang tribulation might appear. Otherwise, Yi Xian would have died without a burial place. Don't be discouraged. I will find a way to let you step into the yin-yang realm, the space-time master said with a complicated expression. No need to comfort me. I'm sure the heaven master has no way. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Although the space-time master was comforting him, how could he not feel the helplessness in the space-time master's words? Sigh. The space-time lord sighed, not knowing what to say. The yin-yang divine punishment is a path of no return. It has always been a legend, and no one has ever been able to overcome it. It is a path of no return, the space-time master murmured. At this moment, Yi Xian circled the starry sky. He looked up at the yin-yang divine punishment that was about to dissipate, and a look of unwillingness flashed across his eyes. Why is this happening? Am I going to stop at the blessed realm for the rest of my life? The future self once told me that I have already changed the future. He no longer exists in the future, but he was able to travel through the river of time. How did he survive back then? Yi Xian murmured. Despair appeared in his mind. Suddenly, Yi Xian's body stiffened, as if he had been struck by lightning. A flash of inspiration flashed across his mind, as if he had thought of something. Future self. Future self. Yi Xian murmured. His eyes gradually lit up. A fiery look flashed across his eyes, and there was even a hint of madness in them. If I can borrow the cultivation base of the future self, will I be able to overcome the yin-yang divine punishment? Yi Xian murmured in a trembling voice. Impossible. Your future self is just an illusory existence. The future has already been changed in your timeline. He no longer exists, let alone borrow his cultivation base. The space-time lord frowned slightly. He rejected Yi Xian's whimsical idea. As the space-time lord, no one understood the mysteries of time and space better than him. Yi Xian's idea was too naive. How do you know it won't work if you don't try? Yi Xian growled coldly. A look of unwillingness flashed across his eyes. Wanting him to stay in the blessed realm forever was more terrifying than killing Yi Xian. He did not want to be reduced to mediocrity. Even if there was only a slight chance, he had to try. Rumble. The next moment, Yi Xian did not care whether the space-time lord agreed or not. He sat cross-legged in the starry sky and formed a seal with his hands. It was the sky-burying technique that he had created. Sky-burying technique. Penetrating the past and present. Reversing time. Disrupting the universe. Condensing the past and present. Penetrating the yin and yang. Chaos as the plate. All spirits as the child. Transforming the future. Deducing the chaos. The chanting of sutras rumbled in the heavens. Yi Xian was reciting the general principles of the sky-burying technique. This was his technique in Tao. Although it was not perfect, it was the foundation of his life. I said it's useless. Your future is just an illusory. The space-time lord's words came to an abrupt halt. What happened next shocked him. Thump, thump, thump. After condensing the chaotic universe and breaking the past and present, an obscure fluctuation bloomed around Yi Xian. The sound of his chanting came from all over the universe. In the beginning, only Yi Xian was chanting the sutras. But as his entire being sank into the sutras, a faint echo came from the chaotic universe. It was as if there were countless Yi Xian chanting the sutras with him. Transforming the future. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The sound of the past, present, and future came from his mouth. The sky-burying technique erupted with a Tongtian light. This light seemed to penetrate the chaotic universe. Although there was no terrifying fluctuation, it caused the space-time lord's heart to tremble violently. Thud, thud, thud. Flowers bloomed in the sky. Chaos no longer existed. An illusory figure seemed to have crossed countless space-time barriers and was walking towards the present. His figure was blurry, as if he would shatter at any moment. But he still walked resolutely towards Yi Xian. It's him. The next moment, the space-time lord gasped in shock. He stared at the figure walking towards Yi Xian. It was as if he wanted to confirm if this was the person he had seen before. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, this blurry and distorted figure walked resolutely towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian also stood up and walked towards him. When the figure merged with him, the next moment, the fluctuation that erupted stunned the space-time lord speechless. Rumble, burying the heavens and destroying the earth, twisting the universe. The light that destroyed the past and present of the universe, sweeping away all space-time, soared into the sky. Yi Xian was dressed in black. 3,000 strands of black hair fell behind his head. His hair fluttered in the astral winds of the stars, and his robes flapped loudly. One hand pointed to the heavens, and the other to the earth. Tribulation come. His words were law, burying the heavens and destroying the earth. At this moment, Yi Xian was far too mysterious. Although he did not erupt with any supreme power, there was an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Rumble. The yin-yang divine punishment that was about to dissipate rumbled once again, forming a terrifying golden tribulation cloud. Kacha. The silver tribulation punishment crashed down. However, at this moment, Yi Xian had a smile on his face. He allowed the tribulation punishment to land on his body, but it wasn't able to harm him in the slightest. Instead, it quickly merged into his body. Rumble. Yi Xian's actions seemed to have angered the yin-yang divine punishment. The golden tribulation cloud rumbled as the golden tribulation cloud brewed. It brought with it a power that could annihilate all living things as it came crashing down on Yi Xian. Kacha. Yi Xian was still smiling as he allowed the tribulation to strike his body. From beginning to end, there wasn't the slightest change. His entire body was covered by the gold and silver light, and a terrifying aura that broke through the primal chaos erupted. Disperse. Yi Xian's 5 fingers were like the heavens. With a gentle wave of his hand, the yin-yang divine punishment dissipated, and the world regained its clarity. You are? The space-time lord's expression was complicated. Even his voice was trembling slightly. He stared at Yi Xian, as though he wanted to confirm the other party's identity. Chapter 1298. The seas have turned into mulberry fields, and the stars have moved. I never would have thought that we would meet again. At this moment, the aura of Yi Xian was deep and mysterious. A trace of a smile hung on his face from beginning to end. However, his smile was mixed with a bit of sadness, and his eyes were slightly erratic. Is it really you? Boom! The space-time lord felt an explosion in his mind, and he stumbled back several steps. He stared at Yi Xian with a look of utter disbelief. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. You are nothing more than an illusory existence from the future, and the timeline has changed a great deal. How could an illusory person appear? The space-time lord murmured. Even though he was the space-time lord, the #1 expert in the profound truths of space-time in the chaos verse, he was still utterly confused. Time involved the past, the present, and the future, but only the present could affect the past and the future. There are many forks in time, and the future holds limitless possibilities. My existence is like a 3-day tree that grows many branches. It's the same principle. In truth, I am the future, but at the same time, I am not the future. But is all of this really that important? I am nothing more than Yi Xian, Yi Xian said softly. No, you are not Yi Xian. Yi Xian doesn't have this level of cultivation. I'm absolutely certain of that. The space-time lord growled in denial. He believed in his own judgment. This was because the current Yi Xian, be it in terms of essence, energy or cultivation base, gave him a mysterious and unfathomable feeling. It was a feeling that only his future self had ever given him. He can transform the future into the primordial chaos. This involves the profound truths of space-time. If you believe that I am the person you once met, then I am him. If you believe that I am Yi Xian, then I am Yi Xian. However, there has always been only one me in this universe. Whether it is the past, the present, or the future, I am nothing more than myself, Yi Xian said with a smile. Only you. The space-time lord was speechless. His brows were tightly knitted together, as though he was pondering the meaning behind Yi Xian's words. Transforming the future is a forbidden art. The primordial chaos cannot tolerate this art. If it weren't for the yin-yang divine punishment, which obscured the workings of the primordial chaos, this art wouldn't have come into being and allowed me to appear before you. Yi Xian. Actually, Yi Xian, I am the future. The workings of the primordial chaos at this moment. The Lord of Time and Space only treated the person in front of him as the future Yi Xian. He knew that he didn't have much time to talk to this person, and before the other party was about to disappear, he asked the answer he wanted to hear the most. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. You are space-time. You can see the future. Why do you need to ask me? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. But the future is uncertain. Everything is illusory. What you do in this life can affect the future, and even change its outcome. Even I, as space-time, cannot determine what the future will be like. The space-time lord sighed bitterly. At the end of the primordial chaos, in the land of reincarnation, I didn't get the answer I wanted, but this answer should be related to me in this life. Perhaps the 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons can also open the door to reincarnation. Yi Xian gave an ambiguous answer. Tell me, what secrets do you have in this life? He definitely doesn't have a so-called mortal body. The space-time lord quickly asked. Yi Xian frowned as he looked at the Lord of Time and Space's heavy expression, as if he was considering something. Only after 3 breaths of time had passed did he finally speak. After 3 breaths, he finally said, There is a mysterious person who is playing a very large game of chess. I am the biggest chess piece in his hand. Perhaps he has planted a seed in me in this life. This seed has always been with me in this life, and it is not controlled by the primordial chaos. It's not just me in this life. All of you, the strongest of all time, are chess pieces in his hands. Perhaps even the entire chaos verse was nothing more than a game in his hands. Boom! It was earth-shattering and extremely shocking. When Yi Xian finished speaking, the Lord of Time and Space was completely stunned on the spot. His lips were slightly trembling, which proved that his heart was filled with monstrous waves. Chess pieces? We are all chess pieces, the space-time lord murmured in a trembling voice. He suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian, only to discover that Yi Xian was smiling bitterly as well. A hint of sorrow could be seen in Yi Xian's eyes. If even the strongest of all time were chess pieces in someone's hands, then just how terrifying was that person? Did such a person truly exist in the Chaos Verse? The Space-Time Lord didn't dare to ponder this any further. He felt as though he had touched upon a terrifying taboo. He could vaguely sense that there was a mastermind controlling everything from behind the scenes, watching them from the shadows. It was as though even his conversation with Yi Xian couldn't escape that person's eyes. At the end of the primordial chaos, in the land of samsara, only by opening that ancient dusty door will one be able to learn the truth of everything. Only then will one be able to truly break free from the path of annihilation, within the samsara of chaos. Yi Xian let out a mournful sigh, his entire being filled with desolation and loneliness. Rumble, the Chaos Verse trembled as the laws of the universe were born. Yi Xian's aura gradually grew chaotic, as though it would dissipate at any moment. I have to leave. Yi Xian let out a sigh. When will we be able to meet again? The Space-Time Lord suddenly came to his senses, frantically asking Yi Xian this question. Transforming the future is a taboo of taboos. Perhaps we will meet again, or perhaps we will never meet again. However, there is no need for you to worry. I am him, and he is me. He has already established his heavens burying heaven technique, and he still has a long way to go. Nothing has been settled yet, and there is still a chance for change. Rumble. An illusory, distorted figure emerged from Yi Xian's body, then transformed into a wisp of azure smoke that vanished without a trace. The workings of heaven began to rotate once more, and the forbidden technique of transforming the future faded away from Yi Xian's body. Goodbye. The Space-Time Lord let out an exasperated sigh. He seemed to be in low spirits, and a hint of exhaustion could be seen in his eyes. Even though he was one of the most powerful existences of all time, he was still in the primordial chaos. He had once believed that he was in control of his own life, but only today did he realize that perhaps he was nothing more than a chess piece in someone else's hands. He's gone. Yi Xian stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, his voice heavy and bleak. Everything he had just experienced was still vivid in his mind, and he didn't know if he was the future, or if the future was himself. Although he had engraved the technique of transforming the future in his heart, it had already fallen silent, without the slightest ripple. This was a technique he had comprehended under the yin-yang punishment, but no matter how hard he tried to activate it, his technique of transforming the future didn't stir at all. Chapter 1299. It seemed like it was really as he had said. Future transfiguration was a taboo among taboos. It could only be used at a specific time and location, and it could only be used under the concealment of the heavenly mysteries. However, today's experience made Yi Xian's heart even heavier. His goal was to become the strongest in history, but today's words made him realize that things were far from simple. If there really was a mysterious and terrifying person controlling everything in this chaotic universe, and even doing something to him, Yi Xian felt his hair stand on end just thinking about it. You've broken the shackles of the mortal body, and finally entered the yin-yang realm. You can leave now, the Space-Time Lord said. At this moment his mind was extremely exhausted. It was obvious that he was still unable to digest what he had just experienced. As for Yi Xian, he had finally stepped into the yin extreme realm. The rest of the path would depend on him. Thank you, Lord, for your kindness. Yi Xian bowed, and expressed his sincere gratitude. The cultivation over the past 1,000,000 years was simply too important to him. It didn't just allow him to enter the yin realm, it also gave him a better understanding of the road ahead. The road ahead was confusing and full of dangers. If he wanted to cut through the thorns, he had to be strong enough to ignore any existence. This was the only thing Yi Xian could do at the moment. Only by being strong could he be fearless. Otherwise, he wouldn't be qualified to explore the land of reincarnation with the Space-Time Lord. The outside world is full of dangers. You have to go through them yourself. Although there are life and death experiences, they are also things you have to face. Only in the outside world can you truly grow. Rumble. The Space-Time Lord rolled up his sleeves, and a space-time gate appeared. The outline of the space-time temple could be faintly seen. Go back and compete with the strongest seeds of the present age. Go and fight against the sect masters of the great sections. I believe you can sweep through all the great enemies and truly catch up to my footsteps. The space-time lord's voice sounded in the starry sky. He took a step and disappeared from Yi Xian's eyes. Yi Xian clenched his fists and stepped into the space-time gate without hesitation. Wang. The gate of time and space rotated, and Yi Xian completely disappeared from within. However, when Yi Xian completely disappeared, a helpless sigh sounded out from the starry sky. Space-time temple. Over the past million years, the Origin Hall Master had remained in the temporal temple, not daring to take a single step outside. He had been waiting for Yi Xian's return. However, what the Origin Hall Master did not expect was that he would have to wait for over 1,000,000 years. He had even almost given up because of this. 1,000,000 years was nothing to the Palace Master of the Origin Palace. It might only be the time for a secluded training session. However, the boring and tedious wait was too unbearable for the Palace Master of the Origin Palace. Wang. Ripples spread out and a gate of spacetime appeared. As Yi Xian emerged from the gate, the Hall Master was overjoyed. He hurriedly went to greet Yi Xian. Congratulations on your return, young friend. Palace Master Origin congratulated Yi Xian with a smile. I've troubled the Palace Master to wait here. Facing an immortal realm existence, especially the current space-time temple master, Yi Xian would not be lacking in etiquette. Origin Hall. Suddenly, a dignified voice sounded. It was the space-time master's voice. Origin Hall was stunned. He immediately came to his senses. His body and mind trembled as he hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Disciple Origin Hall kowtows to you, Heavenly Master. Yi Xian is fated to be with me. Although he is not a member of the Temporal Temple, if an immortal realm expert bullies him in the future, the Temporal Temple will not sit by and do nothing. As for the conflict between him and the other orthodoxies, let him deal with it himself. The Temporal Temple will not stand up for him. The Spacetime Master's voice rumbled. This caused the Origin Hall Master to kowtow again and again. Disciple obeys the Heavenly Master's decree. At this moment, a look of gratitude flashed across Yi Xian's eyes. How could he not understand the Spacetime Master's protection? In this cruel, chaotic world, although an immortal realm expert could not do anything to him, the sect masters and experts of the major sects could easily kill him. Therefore, the Spacetime Master had passed down a decree that if an immortal realm expert wanted to kill him, the Spacetime Temple should intervene. As for those below the immortal realm, it would depend on Yi Xian's own abilities. If he was killed, it would prove that the Spacetime Master had misjudged him. Even if Yi Xian was about to die, the Spacetime Master would not save him. The Spacetime Temple would also not intervene. In the battle between the immortal realm experts, one could only reach the peak by relying on oneself. If one blindly relied on the protection of others, one would not be able to become an immortal realm expert. The Spacetime Master understood this principle, and so did Yi Xian. Therefore, Yi Xian was very grateful to the Spacetime Master. Congratulations on being valued by the Heavenly Master. You must have been cultivating by the Heavenly Master's side for more than 1,000,000 years, right? The Origin Hall Master had already stood up. He smiled kindly at Yi Xian. He did not put on the airs of an immortal realm expert. Instead, he faintly expressed his goodwill to Yi Xian. Looking at the smiling face of the Origin Hall Master, Yi Xian did not feel proud at all. This was because he knew that the Origin Hall Master was not an ordinary person, since he could become the current Spacetime Temple Master. The Origin Hall Master only showed such a warm attitude because of the Spacetime Master. In the eyes of outsiders, the Origin Hall Master was as majestic as the sky, and no one dared to offend him. Yi Xian did not feel proud of being valued by the Spacetime Master. Instead, he bowed modestly and said, I am indebted to the Heavenly Master. After cultivating by his side for more than 1,000,000 years, I was able to reach the Yin realm. Good, the Origin Hall Master said. Previously, I was wondering why you could not reach the Yin realm since you are immortal. Now it seems that with the help of the Heavenly Master, you have successfully reached the Yin realm. However, since you have just reached the Yin realm, You must have not stabilized your realm yet. Why don't you stay in the space-time temple for a while? First, you can stabilize your cultivation. Second, you can get closer to the space-time temple. What do you think? I will accept the Hall Master's invitation. Yi Xian paused for a moment. Then he continued. I heard that there is a space-time divine pavilion in the space-time temple. Not only are there records of space-time grand techniques, but there are also many superior secret techniques. Can I borrow it to take a look? When Yi Xian made this request, the Origin Hall Master was slightly stunned. The space-time divine pavilion was a forbidden area in the space-time temple, just like the scripture depository in the 10,000 Spirit Palace. Only holy sons and deities had the opportunity to enter. Yi Xian was not a member of the space-time temple, so this request was indeed difficult to fulfill. However, the Origin Hall Master only hesitated for a moment. The next moment, he agreed with a smile on his face. The reason was simple. Yi Xian was valued by the space-time master and cultivated by his side for more than 1,000,000 years. A mere space-time divine pavilion was nothing to him. Chapter 1300. The Space-Time Divine Pavilion. It was vast and all-encompassing. The Space-Time Divine Pavilion had existed for 7 yuan hui, and the secret skills it had collected were as vast as the sea. Even if a person cultivated for 1 yuan hui, he or she might not be able to learn all the secret skills in the Space-Time Divine Pavilion. For 100,000 years, Yi Xian was completely immersed in the Space-Time Divine Pavilion. He carefully studied all kinds of secret skills and practiced them according to his own situation. It had to be said that the secret skills in the Space-Time Divine Pavilion were extremely powerful. They had brought unimaginable improvement to Yi Xian. In the past 100,000 years, Yi Xian had finally stabilized his realm. Whether it was the 12 yuan hui worlds that he had created or the skills he had cultivated, they had all improved beyond imagination. What made Yi Xian most excited was that when he stepped into the Extreme Yin realm, he had also created the 3rd level of the sky-burying skill. In the past 100,000 years, he had been gradually perfecting it. Everything was going well. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of turbid air. A wisp of mist flashed across his eyes. At this moment, he stood up and a smile appeared on his face. Turning yin and yang, reversing the universe. Now that I have reached the Extreme Yin realm, I can compete with the younger generation of the Chaos world, Yi Xian said in a low voice. In just 100,000 years, Yi Xian's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. He had broken through the cultivation speed of the Extreme Yin realm. In just 100,000 years, he had stepped into the Extreme Yin realm, from the initial stage to the Extreme Yin realm. He was only one step away from the Yangxing realm. Yi Xian's cultivation speed couldn't be described as slow. If this news were to spread, it would be shocking to hear that he had reached the great completion of the Yin realm in 100,000 years. This might make sense if he had the ultimate battle body, but he only had a mortal body. This kind of cultivation speed shocked even Yi Xian himself. Yi Xian had a feeling that after he passed the Yin-Yang God punishment, his body had undergone a subtle change. He couldn't find the source of this change, but his cultivation speed was definitely 10 times faster than before. Yi Xian did not know why such a situation would occur, but he had a vague feeling that he was a special existence, which was why his cultivation speed was so fast. Perhaps, it was just as the future had said. Someone had done something to him, and he was just a pawn in that person's hand. Yi Xian's gaze was deep as one guess after another flashed through his mind. Then, he sighed softly and dispersed all his troubled thoughts. A smile once again appeared on his face. Be it a chess piece or being controlled by someone else, Yi Xian knew that there was nothing he could do. The only thing he could do was continue to cultivate until he reached the pinnacle. Yi Xian believed that one day, he would reach the end of the primal chaos and completely open the gate of reincarnation. He would truly break through the primal chaos and transcend the primal chaos. Buzz! Yi Xian took a step forward and finally left the space-time divine pavilion. According to his calculations, he had followed the Lord of Space-Time to cultivate to the Yin extreme realm and spent another 100,000 years to reach the large success stage of the Yin extreme realm. He had already spent about 1.5 million years. Now he could finally leave the space-time divine pavilion and go to the chaotic world to compete with the strongest seeds of the various sections. He would climb to the pinnacle step by step and catch up with the strongest of all time, Yi Xian. Yi Xian was bidding farewell to the palace master of the ethereal hall when Lu Yaoxing, who had not seen him for a long time, quickly walked into the hall. When he saw Yi Xian, a strange look appeared in his eyes. Fellow Taoist Yaoxing, Yi Xian lightly smiled as he cupped his hands and greeted Lu Yaoxing. Your cultivation? Lu Yaoxing's expression was complicated. He had only sensed Yi Xian's aura and found that he had already reached the profound level of the Yin realm. Moreover, his aura was extremely smooth and flawless. This meant that Yi Xian had already reached the profound level of the Yin realm. Feeling Yi Xian's current cultivation, Lu Yaoxing's heart was slightly sour. More than 1,000,000 years ago, Yi Xian was only at the second level of the creation realm. However, when they met again, he had already reached the Yin realm. This was simply shocking. However, Lu Yaoxing thought about it and felt relieved. Yi Xian had been cultivating with the space-time master, so it was natural for him to reach this level. After all, the space-time master was one of the 3 strongest people in the primal chaos. To be honest, Lu Yaoxing was extremely envious of Yi Xian. If he had such an opportunity, he was sure that he would have already reached the Yangxing realm, or even beyond the Yin-Yang realm, and stepped into the path-seeking realm. Little friend Yi, I don't know when we will meet again after this parting. I intend to let the 2 of you travel together in the primal chaos. This way, you can take care of each other. Hall Master Origin smiled. If Taoist Yaoxing is willing to travel with me, I am naturally very willing. Yi Xian smiled. Yaoxing, little friend Yi is a guest of the space-time temple. This time, you will go with him. Hall Master Origin looked at Lu Yaoxing and said, Yes, Master. Lu Yaoxing was extremely interested in Yi Xian at this moment, even without Hall Master Origin's order. A deep look flashed across his eyes. Goodbye. Yi Xian bowed to Hall Master Origin and strode out of the space-time temple. Lu Yaoxing also said goodbye to his master and left the space-time temple with Yi Xian. Watching the 2 of them leave, the smile on Hall Master Origin's face gradually disappeared, and he frowned slightly. Disciple, the Grand Tao is like the heavens. The strongest compete. Although Yi Xian is valued by the space-time master, your talent is not inferior to his. Master hopes that you can surpass him and truly ascend to the position of the strongest of all time in the next Yuan Hui. Don't let down Master's painstaking efforts. Hall Master Origin sighed. Everyone had their own selfish motives, and even the palace master of the Origin Palace was no exception. Although Yi Xian was valued by the Lord of Time and Space, the palace master of the Origin Palace had painstakingly nurtured Lu Yaoxing for so many years in hopes that Lu Yaoxing would become the strongest of all time in the next Yuan Hui. Therefore, Lu Yaoxing and Yi Xian could only be enemies and friends. In the battle of the strongest of all time, Lu Yaoxing would definitely not yield an inch. In the chaotic starry sky, 2 figures stood side by side in the land of space-time. The presence of time blanketed the world as the sea of stars surged. The space-time master watched Yi Xian leave the space-time temple. His eyes of time were filled with mixed emotions as he let out a long sigh. The variables have already arisen. The Grand Tao is a struggle. Whether he can go against the flow will depend on himself, murmured the space-time master. Master, will he really become the strongest of all time? Asked a white-robed young man with shoulder-length silver hair. The laws of space and time flowed around him. His eyes seemed to contain time and space. Just a single glance was enough to make people tremble, as if their souls were about to be sucked away. Wei Yang, it's not time for you to be born yet. I hope you won't let down Master's painstaking efforts, sighed the space-time master. Don't worry, Master. I'll definitely become the strongest of all time in the next Yuan Hui. Even if the Child of Chaos and the Child of Destiny emerge, I'll definitely suppress them all, bowed the white-haired young man. Chapter 1301. But there's one thing that I don't understand. You have high hopes for this person. Why didn't you tell him about the forbidden lands of chaos? If he accidentally entered them, I'm afraid. The silver-haired youth hesitated. There are some things that need to be verified, and the only person who can verify this is probably him. Although the forbidden lands of chaos are mysterious, they will show their true fangs sooner or later, and he is the key to unlocking these secrets, the master of time and space said in a deep voice. Everyone had their own selfish motives, and the master of time and space was no exception. Although he had told Yi Xian many secrets, he still kept some secrets. For example, the youth in front of him was the successor that the master of time and space had been cultivating. The master of time and space wanted to mold him into the next strongest of all time. This was like making a bet. The master of time and space could not only bet on one person, and Yi Xian was one of them. As the strongest of all time, the master of time and space naturally had many other tricks up his sleeve. As for the forbidden lands of chaos, the master of time and space did not tell Yi Xian about them. He had his own thoughts in his heart, because this was related to an extremely terrifying matter. Even the master of time and space only had some guesses, but he was not sure if his deductions were true. The chaotic universe was boundless, and the 5 regions of chaos were in the center. But outside the chaotic world was the vast starry universe, and there were many great terrors and ancient secrets hidden in it. Even the strongest of all time did not dare to say that they knew all of them. The road ahead is too rugged and difficult. Only by making sufficient preparations can we deal with the possible dangers in the future. The master of time and space sighed softly, and his eyes were slightly absent-minded. Rumble! The starlight boat shuttled through space. Yi Xian and Lu Yaoxing sat cross-legged on it. The two of them were steering the starlight boat toward the north at an extremely fast speed. The two of them did not speak along the way, and the atmosphere was extremely strange. Lu Yaoxing looked at Yi Xian from time to time, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. Brother Yaoxing, what are you thinking about? Yi Xian said faintly. Boy, I want to know how strong you are now, Lu Yaoxing said. Then why don't you try and find out? Yi Xian replied. Okay. Lu Yaoxing smiled. The starlight boat instantly exploded, and the two of them directly appeared in the outside world. Lu Yaoxing's attack was extremely terrifying, and the power of time and space covered the sky as it smashed towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression didn't waver. His pair of sword fingers sliced through the sky. He didn't use the power of time and space. Instead, he used all the great techniques he'd learned. Good lad, I haven't seen you for more than 1,000,000 years. You really have some skills. Lu Yaoxing said coldly. The space-time sacred tree rippled out. Obviously, he was serious. He didn't believe that he couldn't suppress Yi Xian. Lu Yaoxing had always had a sense of superiority. He thought that Yi Xian's cultivation was lower than his. Back then, when he brought him back to the space-time temple, he was under his protection. But after 1,000,000 years, Yi Xian cultivated with the space-time master. This greatly stimulated Lu Yaoxing's sense of superiority. Today, he naturally wanted to see how far Yi Xian had cultivated. In fact, to put it bluntly, Lu Yaoxing was envious of Yi Xian's opportunity, so he wanted to suppress Yi Xian. Only then could he relieve his jealousy. This was also Lu Yaoxing proving himself. Even if Yi Xian cultivated with the space-time master for 1,000,000 years, he was no longer a match for Lu Yaoxing. Bang! 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 The world shook as they fought fiercely. The clouds within thousands of miles turned into water vapor. The mountains and rivers turned into dust. The battle between the two of them was extremely terrifying. It left the world in ruins. 7 days later, in the mountains on the mottled dirt road, 2 figures were moving forward, one in front and one behind. A gust of wind blew past, stirring up dust and smoke. The 2 figures were faintly discernible in the dust and smoke. Hiss! Lu Yaoxing sucked in a breath of cold air. He followed behind Yi Xian hatefully. He covered his face with one hand and staggered slightly. His face was extremely swollen. Where was his handsome appearance from before? Yi Xian, don't be so smug. This time, I lost to you because I was careless. Once I step into the Yongbirth realm, I'll definitely teach you a lesson. Lu Yaoxing's face was green and purple. He limped behind Yi Xian. His eyes were filled with resentment and unwillingness. Fiasco, a complete fiasco. Lu Yaoxing could not understand. He was in the profound cathode realm, and had the extremely rare space body. He had the Tongtian penetration superpower of time and space. How could he be beaten like this by Yi Xian? He could not win. He could not win at all. He was completely suppressed by Yi Xian. In the beginning, Lu Yaoxing could attack Yi Xian crazily. It seemed that he had the upper hand. But when Yi Xian used the so-called sky-burying skill, he almost died in the sky. If he had only lost to Yi Xian, Lu Yaoxing would not be so angry. But Yi Xian's every attack was aimed at his face. Even if he used the power of time and space to block, he was still beaten black and blue. That was why Lu Yaoxing was in such a state. Of course, Lu Yaoxing also had his own trump card. However, the two of them were just sparring and not fighting to the death. If Lu Yaoxing used his trump card, it would be a life and death battle. He did not want to do that. Of course, Lu Yaoxing also knew that Yi Xian had his own trump card. The two were not going to fight to the death. However, in this simple spar, he discovered that he wasn't Yi Xian's match. No matter if it was cultivation or divine abilities, he'd been completely defeated by his opponent. Moreover, he'd been beaten up like a pig's head. Facing this result, Lu Yaoxing was extremely angry, but he could not do anything. He was not as good as Yi Xian, so he ended up like this. But from this battle, Lu Yaoxing became more and more afraid of Yi Xian. 1,000,000 years ago, Yi Xian was just a small creation realm cultivator. But 1,000,000 years later, Yi Xian could suppress him. This shocked Lu Yaoxing to the core. Don't be so smug. If I could cultivate with the Heaven Master for 1,000,000 years, I would have already entered the Yang life realm. I would have even broken through the Yin Yang realm and entered the half-step path-seeking realm. Lu Yaoxing muttered bitterly. Brother Yaoxing, if I remember correctly, you should call me Big Brother. Are you not going to keep your promise? Yi Xian smiled strangely and looked back at Lu Yaoxing. You? Lu Yaoxing's expression changed. He opened his mouth to refute, but he swallowed his words. His eyes were filled with shame and anger. He could only blame himself. In the previous battle, he had made a bet with Yi Xian. Whoever lost would have to call the other Big Brother. Now he had finally tasted the bitter fruit. Big Brother. Lu Yaoxing was someone who kept his promises. Although he was extremely ashamed, he still called out. He did not want Yi Xian to laugh at him for not keeping his promise. Of course, Lu Yaoxing's voice was very soft. It was so soft that it was almost inaudible. What did you call me? Yi Xian smiled and patted Lu Yaoxing's shoulder enthusiastically. Yi Xian, don't go overboard. Lu Yaoxing fiercely flung Yi Xian away. His originally swollen face turned even more ashen. Don't worry. Since you called me Big Brother, I naturally will not treat you badly. Yi Xian knew that Lu Yaoxing was an extremely proud person. Making him call him Big Brother was already the limit. If he continued to tease him, Lu Yaoxing would probably go crazy from anger. Where are we going now? Lu Yaoxing really did not want to talk to Yi Xian. However, it was the Origin Palace Master who instructed them to travel together. This made Lu Yaoxing feel extremely helpless. The Yama Devil Hall is just ahead. I am going to meet an old friend. After meeting this old friend, we will go kill some people. Yi Xian said indifferently and walked forward. Lu Yaoxing gave Yi Xian a hateful glance, and could only quickly follow. The two of them quickly disappeared at the end of the Earth Path. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.